Cadmium believes every young athlete deserves a shot at greatness. By making data analytics accessible and easy, they provide a new way for coaches and athletes to improve their game. Cadmium's digital scoring app, all-in-one stats, and chart software enable teams to quickly and easily find new ways to strategize and harness the power of data. Join Cadmium in revolutionizing the world of youth sports with tools that make a difference. Schedule a software demo or sign up today at Cadmium.com. Cadmium, where sports technology sparks victory. Do you ever ask yourself, how would my life be different if I had made different choices? Would I be happier? More wealthy? Here's a humorous novel that explores that question, venturing back to that magical time in the early 90s when grunge was taking over big hair bands. It was just when our hero, Amy Gare, began to face the real world. You Hawkeye fans just might enjoy the setting as well. Goodbye Def Leppard, I'll Miss Those Jeans by Steph Kramer can be found on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, and it's free for Kindle Unlimited subscribers.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Ryan Glick, co-founder and CEO of Groove, and if you're a real estate professional, I have something I think you're going to be interested in. We've developed a platform that's transforming the way deals are prospected and managed in the real estate world. With Groove, you can organize real estate data in one place and share real estate deals with just one click. Join other real estate pros and reclaim up to 90% of your time. Head over to letsgroove.com/signup and start your free trial today.
Oh, yes, our wonderful sponsors that help make these types of post games possible. We appreciate Groove, good friend Ryan down at Groove, also Steph Kramer and her awesome book, along with Casmium and Ascent Nutrition and Brad and his great team down at State Farm in Des Moines, and certainly Iowa Smokehouse. Speaking of Iowa Smokehouse, let's go ahead and give them a plug because they've been with us all season long. Tasting is believing with their country-style meat sticks, as shown there in that unbelievable photo with football going on in the background and a beer right next to it. So perfect game day scene, and maybe you enjoyed some Iowa Smokehouse this evening. Check out all the great, tasty, and fresh products. All at iowasmokehouse.com. You can use this code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. That's the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. They've also got salsas, barbecue sauces, and unique ketchups, all available iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. And as I mentioned, Brad Van Meter down at State Farm. Call him for a quote on insurance, whether that be auto or life or business or homeowners, whatever. Very competitive rates, and you're working with a guy who will take care of you. And he's a big Hawkeye fan. He and James, another agent in his office, they are huge Hawk fans. So check it all out, bradvanmeter.com, or call him at 515-256-6480. Brad will give you a 100% free quote. 515-256-6480. Brad Van Meter at State Farm in Des Moines. All right, deep breath in. 45 minutes. We just got done with Iowa women's basketball postgame. I'm kind of pulling double duty, and we lost one of our great co-hosts this evening because, as I mentioned earlier, Kasheen Alexander's daughter got sick. Maybe she was a little overstimulated. Maybe Kasheen had two screens going and all these commentators yelling at her. Hopefully that's not what happened, but that's what I had. What about everybody else? The Iowa women winning, and then, Iowa football coming through in the clutch and winning a game, as I mentioned on the women's basketball post-game show here just a few minutes ago. Iowa winning this game in such an Iowa way, and Nebraska losing this game in such an Iowa way. Or, I'm sorry, in such a Nebraska way, right? I'm kind of getting the two mixed up because this is also what happens. Like, this game was won/lost in a Iowa-Nebraska football series type of way, right? This is unbelievable. The number of last-second field goals that have gone in Iowa's favor. And I'm usually pretty good with years. Somebody texted me right after the kick went through for Drew Stevens and asked me, hey, how many kicks has Iowa had? I know it was flashed up during the game. How many kicks have they had? I know that we had the Miguel Racino's kick. You had the Keith Duncan kick. You had the Marshall Meter kick. Now you have the Drew Stevens kick. The only really good Iowa kicker who didn't make one to win a game against Nebraska, I believe, would have been Caleb Shudak. So I'd have to go back and look at the years. So, but I'm guessing because Keith Duncan, that had to have been like 2019. So I'm guessing Racino's was 18, and then there was 19, and then do we skip all the way to 23? I'd have to go back and look. I could be wrong off on my years, but for the fourth time in at least the last 7 games against Nebraska, Iowa makes a kick in the final moments to win. And for the second straight year, Iowa wins 13-10. Can you believe that? I mean, just ridiculous stuff. And why don't we just skip to this right away before we get to our callers? And yes, Coach Patterson is very close. He is en route home and trying to get his setup all put together. He was there at the game supporting his Hawks as always. I couldn't make a decision on this, folks. So we're just going to go with what I have. And if you want to be upset about it, you're welcome to be upset about it. But I don't know how you could go against either one of these guys. Our RTI threads, players of the game. We'll start with Drew Stevens. He had a 53-yard field goal to win it. In fact, he made it twice because Matt Rule decided to ice him. The first one was actually better than the second, but you just knew he was going to make the second, right? I mean, he cut it a little close with that right upright, but it went through, and that dude is people are going to be tired of me saying this as well. He is an NFL kicker. That's what he is. That's what he is. He's the best kicker they've had since probably Nate Kading, because I don't know that they've had many other kickers from Iowa make the league, and I think this kid's going to make the league. And I don't know that he's going to leave early because I don't know that there's really much of a reason for a kicker to leave early because they, longevity-wise, they should be able to last, into their mid to late 30s or more if they want. But he was phenomenal. Again, when it counted, I thought it was a little odd Iowa didn't send him out for that 56-yarder earlier in the game, but Kirk's playing his field position game, and you can't really criticize it in hindsight. They played with fire for quite a bit of this game. We're down 10-0 for much of the game. In fact, much of the second half. But then Drew Stevens, after Iowa deadlocked it at 10, making the game-winning field goal as time expired. But how about the other RTI Threads player of the game? This was the play of the game. Like, as great as the field goal was, this was the play of the game. So just 2 tackles for Max Llewellyn. He is, and I said it, I think it was last week after the Maryland game. I could be wrong on this. He looks to be the next great pass rusher at Iowa. I mean, I didn't expect to say that. I kind of, somebody corrected me earlier this year because I made a comment about him being a little undersized, and I'll admit when I'm wrong. I was wrong about that. He was pretty thin when he got to Iowa, but he's put on weight, and he's got good length. I think he's 6'5", and I know he talked with the media this week about that spin move that maybe Kirk and his coaches didn't love when he first got to Iowa, but now he utilizes it well. And that was just an unbelievable play to get Iowa the ball back. Unbelievable. You force a sack. You force a fumble in the process of the sack, not by accident, literally by knocking the ball down, and he felt it, right? I'm sure that ball was rock hard and that cold. He knocks the ball down. Dylan Raiola actually had it on his side of the ball. So Max is on his back, basically. But Llewellyn knew that ball came out and is reaching around and manages to grab the ball with one hand, pull that ball under Dylan Raiola's body, and then pull it out. It was actually called initially down by contact on the field. But upon replay, it was abundantly clear within 2 seconds of looking at the replay, it was going to be Iowa's ball in field goal range. That was the play. That was the play. Because we don't know what would have happened. I mean, hey, in a field goal, if it went to overtime, in a field goal shootout, I'd like Drew Stevens. I'd like Iowa's chances. Yeah, I'd love Iowa's chances in that scenario. But Nebraska still had the ball. And they were getting close to field goal range. But again, these types of things happen in this series. You have that play, you have the kick at the end, you have the muffed punt, which wasn't really a muffed punt, right? That completely changed things. Could have been worse for Nebraska. Almost gave up a touchdown there. Should have given up a touchdown. Iowa settles for a field goal inside the 5 because they can't convert. But, I mean, I have it in my notes. I'm going to go through my notes with Coach Patterson here in a little bit. But the return specialist, the punt returner, never touched the ball. And I don't know, in the process of that loud crowd and, you got a bunch of guys rallying for the ball, you would think he'd be yelling, Peter, 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 away from it, get away, get away, get away. But instead, as Iowa players flock towards the ball because they think it potentially touched the return guy, you have 2 other Nebraska players going for the ball. The first one does not touch it. The second one reaches one hand a split second before the Iowa gunner gets his hand on it. And so it is technically a muffed punt. Incredible stuff. Incredible, incredible, incredible. Iowa gets the 3 points out of that. Then you have the heroic, that's what I had in my notes, heroic touchdown run by Caleb Johnson. This game had everything. And yet Iowa didn't. How many total yards did they get? They break 100? I guess they did because they had the big run from Caleb Johnson. But isn't that nuts? This game had absolutely everything, and Iowa couldn't do anything on offense. That's how wild it is watching this series. And this game looked like what we had seen from Iowa football over the last 3 years, winning games that they have no business winning. And I'm not going to be real critical of Tim Lester tonight, and I'm not trying to pass the baton away from him. They were down to their 4th string quarterback. All right. They're down to their 4th string quarterback. It's really cold. So yeah, I'm probably making some excuses for him, but I think the big thing is you're down to your 4th string guy. This is a walk-on. And I got a lot of respect for Jackson Stratton because he hung in there. But this is not like I know it's easy to look at the stats and say, well, I was back to their old Brian Ferentz ways. I think that's a little unfair. And Tim Lester has proven himself throughout the year. By the way, good Nebraska run defense. They were 6th in the conference heading into this game in opponent rush yardage. 6th lowest in the conference. So this was a pretty even matchup on paper. And I had Iowa winning by 3. Iowa won by 3. By the way, Vegas had Iowa winning by 3. Iowa won by 3. So again, just a lot of this uncanny stuff. Iowa finishes the season 8-4, typical Iowa, right? To an extent, even though they've had some 10-win seasons, people think of Iowa, they think of 8-4, and Iowa finishes 8-4. So let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. And I know we got a lot of comments, and we'll get Coach Patterson here with us in a little bit. Here's the score, 13-10, the final. And the phone line is active if you're interested in calling in. The number, 515-635-1601, 515-635-1601, or you can call in via StreamYard. That link is in the description. I'll also throw it up in the live chat. Let's welcome Alex to our Iowa Smokehouse line. And Alex is blacked out. So I'm guessing we lost Alex. We'll try to get him back. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse line. We got Jack. Jack, welcome.
Hello. The curse is over, Corey. The curse is over.
Remind me what the curse was, Jack. You're going to have to remind me. You told me this. Hold on a second. Let me think. Oh, it's the pattern of who wins what games, right? Iowa typically, and was it the odd year, even year thing, or was it when
every year we lost to Iowa State? We lost to Nebraska. So we lost to Iowa State and beat Nebraska, so it's over.
Okay, that's interesting. And how far back did that go for people that didn't catch that show when you called in earlier this year?
I'd say at least from the 1960s.
Was it really that long ago?
Around that time period, maybe the 70s. But it was a long time.
They didn't play both of those teams, but that's interesting. So every year, at least since Nebraska joined the conference, which would have been like, what, 2012, 2013, 2012, I think? You're saying every year from that point forward, when Iowa lost to Iowa State, they lost to Nebraska, but every time they beat Iowa State, they beat Nebraska? Is that right?
Correct.
Interesting. That's interesting. I'm relying on you because I don't know that I've ever validated that, but you were very confident in it. So I'm going to assume that you researched that diligently and that's accurate. So good stuff, Jack. Appreciate you calling in. And yeah, now hopefully next year they can just beat them both and it won't matter. But that's very intriguing, very fascinating. I wonder if Kirk knows that. I bet he doesn't.
Longest winning streak at Memorial Stadium. Let's keep it going next year. Thanks, Corey.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate the call. Good stuff right out of the gates from Jack. And there's a super chat here from Roger. Appreciate this, Roger. Super chats will get priority, folks, tonight because I can't make it through all the comments as much as I would love to be here for 10 hours. I just cannot. Roger, nothing feels better than a Hawk win and seeing the Corn Huskers, I'm going to pronounce it right, blow another one. Thanks for the memories, Kirk, but time to step aside. Hey, bro. Wow, that took a vindictive turn. Not that I'm saying you're wrong. You have every right to your opinion that Kirk should step aside, but wow. Interesting. So everybody has a right to their opinion. Roger, appreciate your super chat, sir. Thank you for being here and appreciate the donation to the show. And again, the phone line is open, 515-635-1601, or you can dial in via StreamYard as we recap Iowa's 13-10 win over Nebraska. We'll also get Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com in here shortly as he is fresh off Kirk Ferentz's postgame press conference. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse line. Let's go to Alex. Alex, welcome back, sir.
Good evening, Corey. How was your Thanksgiving?
I have done very little over the last 3 days other than watch sports. So I would say my last 3 days have been very positive. How about yours?
Pretty good. I saw a concert on Wednesday night before Thanksgiving and had a pretty good Thanksgiving with the family. So,
what am I seeing? What am I seeing above you? Is this hanging above you?
It's a cross that my mom got me from Jerusalem. It has a bunch of stuff from Jerusalem, like parts of the soil and everything. So. Okay.
I just didn't want anything. I didn't want anything to fall on your head. It was right above your head, and it looked like it was about to nail you. So I just wanted to make sure you were safe.
Be somewhat get killed by the cross. Be kind of somewhat ironic. So maybe outside of that, so I wear, just kind of a little side story. I wear a Fitbit watch, and it tracks my heartbeat and everything. And I do work out a fair amount. And I tell you what, it tracks my heartbeat watching these Iowa games. And if I reach above certain beats a minute, it gives me quote unquote active minutes. I have more active minutes watching Iowa football games than I do actually working out.
Oh my!
I looked at the very end of the game. The highest I got was 150 beats, and I think that was right before Iowa got that fumble, or right in that time frame. So,
well, this has been quite I'm seeing James live chat here, private chat. Apparently, Georgia and Georgia Tech are in overtime number 6.
yeah, I have it pulled up. I have my phone, which is what I'm calling in on, against my computer screen, kind of blown up so I can see the score. It's still 42-42. I haven't seen any updates yet. Yeah, so in the 6th overtime.
Absolutely nuts.
And it looks like Georgia's Tech did not get their 2-point conversion, so Georgia can win this game. And apparently, there's been some real questionable officiating in this game.
James is saying it's going to number 7 now. James is
they
saying,
might. Well, I'm on the ESPN app, so it might be delayed too. But so,
wow, incredible stuff. I guess we need to I should probably put this up as we're talking, just so I can. I mean, this may be a historic. I mean, they're going 2-point conversions, right? After the second overtime.
Think of Illinois, Penn State in 2021.
Insane.
So, but I'm always happy with an Iowa victory. I hate getting kind of nitpicky, maybe negative on this, but it just seems like when Iowa faced a run defense, you look at UCLA, even Michigan State, that had, both teams had pretty good run defense. It felt like Iowa didn't want to change anything on offense. Now, granted, in this game, we had a 4-string quarterback starting, so take that into consideration. But it just seemed like we didn't try to do anything different to make the defense think about things. We did one play action that first half, and it led to 4 yards on first down. And then we threw one time on first down, hit Jacob Gill for 17 yards, which was the longest play that I think Iowa had outside of that Caleb Johnson 74-yard touchdown run, which, well, it was technically a pass, receiving touchdown, which, I mean, that was just all Caleb, just being Caleb at that point.
It was let's say, I know Ashton Genty's had a lot of those moments, and this was not like, this game wasn't some national, it was a Big Ten game, right? So different level than what Ashton Genty's done it at Boise. It wasn't a national moment, so you can't look at it and say, well, that's on Caleb Johnson's Heisman reel. No, but that was a Heisman-esque run. Like if Iowa was in contention for something, that would be the type of play that when you're talking about New York finalists, you're looking at, because that was just putting the team on your back, and very reminiscent to a couple of plays that Akram Wadley made while at Iowa, although more impressive from a physical standpoint. And he's done it all year, right? The consistency from Caleb has been astounding. But just incredible. They didn't win this game without that play.
No, and it was frustrating for me to watch, because Caleb's I don't think he's a good in between the tackles runner in the terms of where, like, if he finds that crease, he's gone. Well, this Nebraska defense, very sound on the run. Caleb got most of his yards when they bounce it outside on a counter or an outside zone, but every time they try to run inside zone, he got 0 to negative yards. And it was frustrating to me where I'm watching this and they're putting 8-9 guys in the box, and we're bashing our heads against the wall, and there's no change. Now, kind of shifting to the defense, this Nebraska team, with Dylan Morella, really wants to throw. They've had some success at late running the ball with, I think it's Emmett Johnson or Amir Johnson. I can't think, but they have 3 solid running backs. And I felt like Maxwell needed a bigger role in this game. And this is nothing against Deontay Craig, who's he's a solid-ish defensive end. But when we need someone to get to the quarterback, Maxwell and Ethan Hurkett showed time and time like they can put a little pressure on him. There was the one play or one series, I think, I can't remember if it was the one right before the fumble or actually on the fumble where, I mean, Dylan Morell was standing back there. It was probably 5 or 6 seconds before I think he threw the ball. And it's just like, so, and then let's see. And then I think the series before Iowa got the fumble recovery on that last series I think it was right after Caleb Johnson's big run. He didn't show the field the entire time. It was Kamari Moulton all 3 when Iowa went 3 and out, which was weird to me. And it's like, well, I mean, I get it if it's like, okay, he's got to go back out there because the defense got a turnover. Defense was out there for a little bit, got him to punt the ball. So it's like, is he gassed? Is he hurt? So it was a weird series of events when Iowa had the ball the second to last time.
I do wonder can I just say this? I do wonder this Alex, and we've been saying we talk about this offensive coordinator thing for years, but what we saw today, play calling wise, I think was inconsistent with what we've seen the rest of the year, but it was consistent with what we've seen in tight moments. So what does that tell you? Like, I believe that Kirk Ferentz's offensive coordinators are making play calls from play to play, but Don Patterson has talked on numerous occasions about how a lot of coaches will, in big moments, dictate, okay, run, pass. And so I almost just wonder if, because this was such a tight game and they were playing from behind, perhaps Kirk dictated a little bit more than he should be. And I wonder if he does that a lot in these types of games, because he's not a play caller, but he can still dictate run, pass, run, pass. That's not play calling. That's just dictating. And then if you're the offensive coordinator, you're kind of limited with what you can do. And my understanding is that Liddell Betts is actually the one who is going to, more often than not, communicate with Coach Lester and say, okay, Kamari's ready to go here, or KJ's ready to go. They're communicating with one another about personnel. So I don't have an answer. I know people were frustrated with Kamari in those short yardage situations in the play calling. I just wonder if perhaps there's more dictation in these tight games than one would hope for. And I wish Kirk would step back, because I think a guy like Tim Lester, as seasoned as a play caller as he is, he can handle that moment. But I also don't know. I'm not there, and Tim's up in the box. It's not like we can tell anything on the TV screen.
No, and I think you touched on it too, where this season, I think Tim Lester, this is his first season, and we've seen a tremendous amount of success. Obviously, the running game has been a boom, obviously, and the offensive line has shown great progress. They're finalists, I believe, for the Joe Moore Award, or is the Outland the full offensive line, and Joe Moore is the single individual?
Joe Moore is exactly. Joe Moore is the unit.
Okay, but so you got to give him credit there, but obviously the lack of a passing game is really concerning. So, and I know Tim Lester said, I believe this last week, said we need to hit the portal, whatever that means, whether it's more wide receivers, another quarterback. So I believe we have the right offensive coordinator in.
Yep.
I know obviously sometimes the play calling was a little suspect if it's in specific games. You think about Michigan State and UCLA, and in this game a little bit. But I think we have the right person calling the plays. I do personally believe that Kirk does tend to has some hand in it. I think you touched on that a little bit, where in some of these bigger moments in certain situations where he kind of maybe dictates on what types of plays that Tim has to call. And maybe
by the way, when the offensive line or whatever's breaking down up front, and I think at times it was the offensive line, at times it was maybe, I think there were moments tonight, and the advantage you have Tim Lester being up at the box is he should be able to audible down last second to Jackson Stratton, and I don't know how much that was happening, but I didn't see Jackson Stratton making many changes at the line of scrimmage tonight, and so.
Well, I know the headset, it cuts off after 15 seconds. I remember them saying that. I was watching another game, and they said that like after 15 seconds, communication cuts. And then if that's the case, and I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be, in some certain situations, I'd like to see Iowa play with a little more tempo, get to the line, see what you're having, and then that way you still have maybe 10 to 15 seconds, depending on where you're at on the play clock, to say, okay, we have a good personnel on the field with maybe 2 or 3 wide receivers and a tight end and your running back, and your offensive line has been solid. Okay, what do we see? Okay, we have maybe 2 to 3 play calls that we can call. Then you send it down to whoever the quarterback is, and then say, okay, hey, this is what we're doing. So I'd like to see Iowa maybe try to implement that a little more. And then I think.
I want to get your opinion on this. So Copper Stacker says Iowa is a much better team than Nebraska. I don't know about that. I don't know that that's the case. They just won by 3 at Kinnick.
0 for 10 for third downs to like double the amount of Nebraska had double the amount of yards. Yeah, I think Iowa capitalized in very specific situations, and Nebraska
Nebraska team. They are a better team because of what you just said. And they do have a better overall record, so you've got to give them the edge. But to say they're a much better team, I don't agree with that. And on paper, the data, the statistics heading into this game, the team statistics say these teams were very even, and that's why the line was so close. It was basically a pick 'em without the home field. And so, I mean, obviously Iowa's dealing with injuries, but everybody is. I mean, everybody deals with injuries. Quarterback is significant. Everybody deals with injuries, especially this part of the season.
And I don't think I was that much better. I mean, like I said, they were able to capitalize. And there's one play when Nebraska had the ball and Dylan Raiola threw a pass to Nair, and it just went right through his hands. If he catches that, that's either a huge gain, gets him to field goal range, or it could have been a touchdown. And Iowa has not shown that they could have moved the ball outside of the one play. So I think there was maybe a little bit of luck. And then I've been on here, I feel like, a little too long, so I'll leave with two more things. One, I saw a little bit of the Jay Higgins shortly after the game. They said Nebraska's captains didn't shake their hands, and Matt Rule walked through their warm-ups. So it's, I understand this is heated rivalry, but at the same time, it's just like, that's where I think it means a lot more in terms of, because it's lack of respect. It's like, hey, you're a good football team. We respect you, but we're going to beat you. And I think if that continues, I hope Iowa just kills Nebraska. And then I'll leave this on. The last thing I'll say is on a personal note of specifically this football season. I honestly want Beth Getz to sit down with Kirk and say 8-4, considering all the talent that we had brought back, specifically on the defense. Offensive line has looked really well. KJ obviously was, you can argue Heisman potential, and we go 8-4 with the schedule that we had. Is this acceptable? Make him answer that question. Was this an acceptable season? And if it's not, it's like, okay, then how do we fix this? Because going forward, you look at Iowa's schedule going forward, it doesn't, 2025, I think we have Oregon and I believe Ohio State. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have three of the top. I think Penn State might be in there. We have three of the top, teams in the Big Ten, they have to play next year. And it's not going to get any easier. And the fact is that we cannot compete against the elite of the teams is a problem when, we even think about 5 years ago where we could, as long as we kind of mucked it up, we can make it a game. And I think Kirk has done a lot of great things for this program. I think he's brought consistency and a great culture to this program. I think one of them said, one of the defensive linemen was talking about Kevin Bell, said this is a culture. This is going to be a culture game or a culture drive, I think, after that when that fumble happened. And so I give Kurt tons of credit for implementing this into the program. But there's times where I think we have to know, is it time to say enough's enough? We appreciate everything you've done. Right now, you're a hindrance.
So are you just advocating at this point, because there's going to be some people that really resent you coming on the show after a win like what we just saw and advocating for Ferentz to go? But is it more so you're saying that now because it's end of the season,
It's at the end of the season. Obviously, we still have a bowl game to play for, and obviously you get more practices. But it's you look at the season, and I as a fan this season have felt more like I felt like apathetic. Like I didn't bother calling in on the Maryland show because I almost didn't care. Like in this game, like obviously I got worked up. I talked about it. I got worked up watching this game because I want them to win. I'd never want them to lose, but at the same time, it's like you think about what could have been, what the season could have been, with everything that was laid out in front of us. And I mentioned all the talent, specifically on defense, that we brought back. And yeah, we had one bad game against Michigan State, and then it happens again against UCLA, and obviously Ohio State. We lost to Iowa State.
But the Iowa State game was as inexcusable because of the way they lost.
Yeah, it's that what if scenario of what could have been. Now, if we went 9-3, I may not be on here, on my little soapbox here talking about, is a 9-4 but you have to take everything into consideration. That's what I said, is like everything that we know, the talent that we have, the production that we've had on offense, the schedule that we had in front of us. Is 8-4 acceptable? Is this an acceptable result for everything that I just said? And in my opinion, no, this is not an acceptable way. Now, whether it's Beth, I'm not saying Beth needs to fire Kurt, but I think a serious conversation needs to be had of like, okay, when do we decide to pass the reins? Kirk, like I said, he's been a great coach in terms of these players love Kurt. I don't think you can find a player outside of this program that doesn't love Kurt.
Yep.
And I mentioned it, the culture that he has inputted, the amount of transfers that we have leaving is, one of the lowest in the country because they like playing for this program. So it's a point to where it's a tough conversation. I mean, in one of my jobs where, I'm a supervisor, I have some people that, hey, great personalities, but sometimes they don't cut it. And it's a tough conversation. So where it's like, hey, you're not performing where we need to be. I don't like doing that, but as a supervisor, I have to do that. And as Kirk's boss, it's time to say, hey.
Yeah, I get you, but she's not doing that this year. Because she just did it with Brian last year. So
yeah.
Whether you're right or wrong, and I'm not saying you're wrong, there's going to be the apologists that are going to beg it, yell at you and bring up Nebraska and the fact that they're 6-6 in spite of 3 years into the Rule tenure. You're going to bring up Wisconsin, missed a bowl game this year. Okay, 2 years into the Rule tenure. They're going to bring up Wisconsin, who failed to make a bowl game this year, a couple of years into Fickle's tenure. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that's not happening. Here's what this may be totally insignificant to Iowa football fans on here. I think there's a greater chance what you just said is going to happen with men's basketball. I think that might end up being the priority for Beth Getz this offseason. We'll see what Fran's bunch does. And again, I know you may not. Do you care about basketball at all, Alex?
No, wrestling is way better.
Okay. But my point is, you watch Iowa men's basketball games, and there's nobody in the stands. So I think that is the biggest concern. Fran's not getting people in the stands. As much as you may be, and there may be a large group of people, a faction of people that are with you on that. They were 7-4 heading into tonight, and that place was packed in single digit temperatures. I mean, I don't think that there's any chance that happens, what you just said. It took a lot of moxie for her to do what she did with Brian so quickly into her career. I think she's smart enough to realize that would be rocking the boat too much for a very young Beth Getz as it relates to her time as AD. That's my 2 cents.
And I think I see that side of it too, but I think eventually that conversation will have to come, but I think it's going to have to come sooner rather than later, because I think we'll see what happens next year. Maybe Iowa will surprise us and, rattle off a bunch of wins and where they probably shouldn't win. It's like, okay, so I guess, we'll see. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. But again, I'm not saying I hate Kirk, and I'm not saying I wish he would get fired, but I feel like a tough conversation needs to happen eventually. So, but that's all I got. I appreciate you taking my call. I feel like I got on here too long. Is Corey gone?
No, Corey's not gone. This always happens when you're here. I'm pretty sure you are sabotaging the show because it only happens when you're on.
I'm trying to take over. I'm trying to make it the Alex show.
We're going to get we got Coach Patterson. Coach is with us. Coach, you came just in time because somehow my internet totally failed. Maybe it was Don actually sabotaging us from behind the scenes. Don,
no
welcome.
way.
Alex, anything else before we get to Coach?
No, hey, Don, I know I tend to usually get on here pretty early. I don't get to have a chance to chat with you, but I always appreciate your insights. I tend to listen to a little bit after when I get off. Usually I have something to do with the family after these games, after I get done talking. But always, Corey, I always, I appreciate everything that you do, giving us fans a chance to, vent, whether it's a loss or elate when there's a win. And Don, you're always very analytical, gives us some great stats and great feedback. So I appreciate both of you. I think a lot of fans appreciate what you guys do on here. So again, I feel like I've been on here way too long. I apologize, everybody. I'll get off now. Bye.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Alex.
Good stuff. Real quickly, just want to thank Lonnie Wolf for the donation. Do appreciate that, Lonnie. And do we have our next Iowa Smokehouse caller? No, we lost our caller. Let's see if we can get our caller back, because our caller was on the line. No, we're not going to get our caller back. I was trying to get our next caller on here, Don, because we had somebody who was waiting since the very beginning. If we get them, we'll throw them into the mix here. We've also got Doug, we got James, we got Tom, we got Ryan here, all waiting on hold. Don, you're fresh off a pretty cold game at Kinnick Stadium, but I led with this, Don. I don't know if you caught the first part of the show, but this is a game that transpired and finished exactly the way a game in this series, you expect a game in this series to end. And I hate to say this for the sake of Cornhusker fans, although I'm not really necessarily too sympathetic toward that fan base. Nebraska loses games this way year after year. Iowa wins games this way year after year. And so it's almost poetic that year after year, Iowa beats Nebraska this way. It's like
some things never change.
It's the perfect storm. It's one team who defies the odds, and one team that finds a way to win, and one team that finds a way to lose. And going head to head, it seems to always end in a field goal for Iowa.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Last year, wasn't it also 13-10?
It was. And it was Marshall Meter, ironically enough, after Drew Stevens was pulled. I mean, it's just I don't know how else to explain. It's just incredible.
Yeah, I agree. It was an unusual game in many ways. Let me begin by saying this. I texted you the other day, and you haven't shared it with the listeners, but I don't mind talking about it. As you know, Corey, I came up with a new prediction model that I was so excited about, because going into today's games, it accurately predicted the winner, identified the winner, 65 out of 67 games, 97% win. And I was so proud of that. Well, guess what? Tonight's win was an exception to the prediction model also. They won 3 out of 5. We didn't. They won 3, we won 2. They were supposed to win the game. Wow. And I said it this way, Corey. We have mastered the art of winning ugly.
Correct. Yeah,
we've done that.
And it's not just this year. It's been almost every year, right? I mean,
or another more polite way to say it is we don't beat ourselves. And oftentimes that produces a win.
Don, I led with this earlier, and I'll throw this up here real quickly to have you comment on it if you could. I couldn't settle on a player of the game, so I just gave it to 2 people. Drew Stevens makes not 1 but 2 53-yard field goals in the final seconds of this game. So how can you not love that for a kid who deserved it? And I'll just keep saying what I continue to say, Don. He's an NFL kicker. Yep. He is an NFL kicker. Max Llewellyn, what an unbelievable play. And I don't know if you've gotten a great replay of that yet, Don.
I haven't had a good look at it.
It's an incredible example of just wherewithal. First of all, he gets the sack. He forces the fumble, the strip sack. And that wasn't by accident. That was hand on the ball. And as the ball is coming loose from Dylan Raiola, he's on the back side of Dylan Raiola, but he's reaching around to feel for the ball, and he somehow grabs it and then pulls it under Raiola and gets possession of it. It was an incredible play, and if they don't get that play, they might not win. I mean, they may go to overtime, and I like Iowa's chances in a field goal shootout, although what Georgia and Georgia Tech just proved is once you get to overtime number 2 and 3 and 4, it becomes more about your 2-point conversion offense, and I don't have a lot of confidence in Iowa's 2-point conversion offense. Yeah. So what a big play by Max Llewellyn. There are RTI Threads players of the game. You're going to be impressed when you see that replay. But any comments on those two guys, Don?
Well, you and I have always felt this way about Drew. I make the comment to people that I saw tonight. He'll definitely kick on Sunday. He's going to be kicking for an NFL team next year. That's how good he is. And even though they tried to ice him, I thought he's going to knock the next one through also. And he did.
Yep.
I think in terms of style points, the first field goal was a better kick, I guess, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a better
the
kick.
second one, it still counts. It went through.
And he said that on his post-game on-field interview with NBC. You got to listen to I loved that interview. I don't know if people caught that, but if you listen to Drew Stevens, he is such a unique personality. And I know kickers are, but he's got a moxie, a swag about him that is hard to explain. And he's just a confident guy. Please
tell me what he said in so many words. What did he say?
Maybe I can find the interview for you and play it. But basically, he said what you said. He said, the gal asked, the sideline reporter said, what goes through your mind when you're going up there to kick? And he's like, hey, it's the same as every kick
right now. How did you know?
Can you hear me, Corey?
Okay, I think we had a little issue there. I think we got rid of it, Don. We had some interference or something. All right, let's see if we can. You got me back, Don?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know what was going on there. I was hearing voices, and so I muted it. But anyways, basically he just said, hey, I black out in those big moments, and he did acknowledge, on tape, the first one was better than the second one. I'm going to see that when I look back at the tape. But you'll have to listen to it because he's just he's a unique guy. And we talked about his numbers last weekend after his performance against Maryland. He was our RTI Threads player of the game last weekend. And I honestly thought it was a little strange. I tweeted it out during the game, Don. I said, I think it's a little odd, not like horrendously bad, but a little bit interesting, curious that Kirk didn't send him out there for that 55, 56-yard field goal. That's how much confidence I have in him.
I agree. I was surprised we didn't take a shot at it because I think he'd have made that one too.
I agree. And I know he's playing the field position battle, and I know that ball's probably real cold in these types of temperatures. How does that affect a kicker, Don, in this type of climate?
I do recall that the pitch punt worked out okay. Didn't we down it maybe around the 5?
Yes, they did at least inside the 10. I'd have to go back and look at the final numbers. I think you're right, inside the 5.
But the sad aspect of it is I believe they put together more than a few first downs to get off the goal line.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Nebraska moved the ball down the field. And I will admit I waited to tweet that out because I know what Kirk is thinking in that situation. He's thinking, let's pin him back, get a 3 and out, and then we'll get the ball back in field goal range. But that's not how it worked out. And those 3 points could have really come back to bite them, especially if they lost in overtime.
I agree. I do recall this. This is pretty telling about our first half. After playing for 24 minutes, we had exactly 24 yards in total offense. At the 24-minute mark, we had gained 24 yards. So we were good for a yard a minute. So based on that, we'd end up with 60.
Yeah.
So we picked up the pace a little bit. We
Well,
earned our first down at the 12-minute mark.
Half of
the second quarter, I should say.
Don, we can run through. Can we run through kind of a brief recap for people? I know we're about an hour into the show, but I've got some notes I like to share. First of all, Brian, thank you for the super chat. He says, I love a win, but my future cardiologist would appreciate it if it didn't cost me years off of my life. Go Hawks, pass me the tequila. Appreciate that comment, Brian. Super chat and vital transformation. Hawkeyes are the best. KF is the best. Corey is the closer. Go Hawks. Appreciate that. Vital transformation does mean a lot, and appreciate the donation. D. Rolifson, a trivia question for Corey. What school did Tour de France host Paul Burmeister, graduate from? bonus if you know his position too. I have no idea. I have no clue, Don.
Well, he's talking about Paul Burmeister,
Yeah.
and Paul has done things like the Tour de France for NBC, but
Okay.
I know him as one of my favorite quarterbacks.
Right. From Iowa. Is he talking
From
about his
Iowa.
high school, or is he talking about? I know he played quarterback at Iowa. Is that what he's asking? I thought he's asking what high school he played at.
Are we sure this guy's not a Nebraska fan? I don't know.
No, he's in Iowa. I think he's asking what high school he graduated from.
West High.
Okay, West High. All right. Yeah, I wouldn't have known that. I knew he's from Iowa, of course. I knew he played for Iowa. So hopefully that's I'm misunderstanding the question. Yes, he played for Iowa. I did know that. Don, you and I have talked about him for a long time. In fact, he was on my short list to replace Gary Dolphin, if and when that happens. And I don't know.
He is really good at what he does.
Yes, he is.
As you know, Corey, he's been the radio voice of Notre Dame for many years too.
Yeah, and I don't know that I don't know what the money difference is there, but it'd be interesting to see if they made a call to him, if and when that happens with Gary. It will happen, right? Gary's not gonna call games forever. Vital Transformation, appreciate this super chat as well. Love me some Hawkeyes, love Corey and Coach Patterson. So thank you very much, Vital Transformation. Let's run through kind of some notes from the game. Well, I guess we'll start in the first quarter. My first question to you, Don, and we've not yet gotten Tom Kakert here from HawkeyeReport.com. We do expect Tom. I have not heard otherwise. But let me ask you this. There was some chatter on social media prior to the game because it sounds like Cade McNamara did not go through senior day festivities. Do you have an explanation for that? Or is one to assume that either A, he was not there due to his concussion, or B, he's pursuing another year, either here or somewhere else? Do you have an explanation as to why he may not have gone through the process there?
Well, that was the word I heard tonight, is he was simply contemplating his 7th year or a 6th year, or whatever next year would be.
Contemplating or coming for, because if you're contemplating, guys still go through senior day ceremony. I mean, you're still going to go through the ceremony even if you come back. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, I agree. Let's face it, there are some guys end up going through 2 or 3 senior ceremonies and before they're done.
And I'm guessing if we looked at it, Nick DeYoung may be one of those guys because he went through tonight, but didn't he also go through it last year? I'm assuming he did. I would have to think. Yeah.
And I don't have any issue with that. You know, if you're not sure that you're coming back, then we'd like to have a chance to honor you in what would end up being your last game.
Yeah.
Last home game, I should say. So doesn't bother me if a guy walks twice as a senior. That's no big deal. I'd rather them walk twice than not walk at all. Say it that way.
Right.
I think they all deserve a chance to be recognized and a chance to honor those that raised them. And for that matter, siblings that might be there too. A lot of proud moms and dads, a lot of proud grandparents today at that game with those guys that in almost all cases have played their last game in Kenny.
So you don't have much of an explanation for that?
Well, I heard a lot of things tonight, and I don't really know what to believe. I was at practice on Wednesday. Cade was practicing on Wednesday.
Okay.
Someone told me that he stormed out of practice on Tuesday. I don't know that that's true, but that's one story that was being told tonight. Then he simply protested the fact that he was not gonna be the starter for tonight's game. Again, I don't know that that's true. That's just a rumor that was out there. Supposedly that all happened on Tuesday. Again, that's not coming from any official source. I don't know that there's any truth to it. But I'm just repeating what people were saying.
Well, we'll get I think we're going to hear from Tom, but I also don't know. He just sent me a message. So he is en route. I think it's been a bit of a delay. I'm guessing there was some celebrations that maybe slowed down the post-game press conference with the coaches. So please be patient, folks. We will get Tom Kakert here following Kirk's press conference. He just got back to the press box. So Bob brings up the offensive line. Don, what was going on there? Because obviously, first half especially, Iowa really struggled to run the ball. Really on both sides, it seemed like the line was the push was going Nebraska's way on both sides of the ball. Is that what you were seeing, or was there something else going on from a play calling standpoint?
I think an accurate general comment is they were winning the line of scrimmage more often than we were. Yes, on both sides.
Is that a surprise to you heading into this game? I mean, Nebraska was 6th in the conference in rush defense. Obviously, Iowa has been really good, but they've also had games like against UCLA where they can't run the ball to save their lives. It's a little bit confounding that Iowa has had those feast or famine type of roller coaster up front. But is that the nature of this type of run scheme? Having games where you're going to have almost nothing in games where you pop off for 200 plus?
Well, I think it all hinges on how well you match up against their D line, or maybe to be more specific, against their front seven. How well can you block their front? How well can you work up to the next level, up to the linebacker level? How big are those seams that our backs need to be able to get through? If we control the line of scrimmage and those decisions are happening a yard or 2 or 3 downfield, then that's a good thing. But tonight, of course, we didn't have that kind of consistency. Those defensive tackles for Nebraska, those are some big guys and some strong guys. And I don't know that they were any more the problem than the defensive ends, but in general, the front seven's pretty darn good, and we've struggled against front sevens that were ranked no better than this one, that's for sure. I think UCLA probably came in lower ranked in terms of rush defense, and I don't know about Michigan State either, but the bottom line is that they did a good job of controlling our offensive and defensive lines. They moved us better than we moved them.
I'm amazed. So before you hopped on here, Don, there was one of our callers, Alex, who kind of went on his soapbox about the coaching situation, and he's calling for Beth Getz to step in and basically make it clear that 8-4 is not acceptable with all the talent that was returning. And I'm curious, this is interesting. Actually, before we get to that, we'll talk about this in just a second because we want to get Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com on here and then off the air so that he can get back to the Quad Cities safely. Tom, welcome. Appreciate you being here, sir.
Well, it's good to be here. I saw Coach P today, and it was awesome to see you, Coach Patterson. And your lovely bride.
Full disclosure, Tom, as far as the listeners go, I stated the other day with Corey, I will be sitting out in the crowd and I'll not miss 1 minute of this game. And I will confess, I ended up in the press box tonight.
Yeah, you ratted him out, Tom. He hadn't said that yet.
Oh, okay.
You exposed.
Well, I was prepared to. But in my defense, Lisa said, a couple of 3 days ago, she said, you're going to be mad at me. And I said, why would I be mad at you? And she said, well, I know you're going to be mad because I know how you feel. I called, I won't say who she called, but she called someone that we've known for many, many years that's still working in athletics. And she said, Don would never say a word to you or anyone else in athletics. But I don't want him sitting out on Friday night. And of course, as you guys both know, I've had some heart issues, and of course, It's not very healthy for someone that does have heart issues to be exposed to a lot of cold weather for a 3-hour period of time. So long story short, I said, I'm not mad at you. In some ways, I'm relieved because I have to admit, it's going to be a cold night, and I'll be safer with my health in the press box than I would be out in the crowd.
Absolutely.
But I want to assure everyone, it wouldn't have mattered if she hadn't called and made arrangements with somebody that's an old and dear friend that's in position to help us out. I would have been right there in my normal seats and would not have complained from start to finish. But I did enjoy the game more in the warm confines of the press box.
Well, Tom, I'm curious. I'm guessing maybe there's a bit of a delay because of some celebrations going on in the locker room on Iowa
Yeah,
Senior
some
Day.
extended post game. Had some. Boy, it's been an interesting post game. And by the way, 5 first downs and you win a football game.
Yeah.
I don't know. But it's just like that's Iowa football.
Yep, and it's
Where
Nebraska
I
football
just
too. It's also Nebraska football, Tom. Yeah.
Nebraska. Well, it's also maybe a little karma because Jay Higgins kind of went off after the game about the Nebraska players and coaches' behavior pre-game, during game, that really offended him and bothered him because they didn't shake hands with the Iowa players, the coin toss, which is customary. It's just good sportsmanship. They refused. Apparently, Matt Rule walked through their Iowa pregame, and that bothered him. And Jay apparently went over by the sidelines at some point and tried to shake hands with Coach Rule. And Coach Rule goes, I don't know who you are, which is kind of stunning. But yeah, there's just it's interesting how disrespected the Iowa players felt by the way that Nebraska carried themselves. And Jay was more than happy to share that story. And from his perspective, it feels like karma got Nebraska because of the way that they did Iowa.
Was any of that observed by any of you in the press box? Like any of the
I
pregame stuff?
I didn't, but apparently Jay did a self handshake where he pretended to shake his own hand. He turned the other way, apparently.
How was that
in the
not caught by
pregame.
cameras? How was that not caught on cameras? We're talking about the coin
No.
toss handshake, correct?
Yeah, I don't know what was.
That had to have been caught by
I don't really ever pay attention to the coin toss.
Sure.
So,
Don, have you ever heard of that? Does that happen often? I can't imagine it does. I don't know that I've ever seen it.
I can't recall it happening.
Yeah, it's just when you behave that way, and you I've just seen some. It just seems like all these different schools just behave strange when it comes to Iowa. Just very strange. I mean, the Iowa State players, they always walk down the Iowa sideline at Kinnick just so they can kind of mean mug the Iowa players and some of the fans in the stands. No other team does that. It's weird that people just try to get over. And for Nebraska, that's 9 of 10 that they have lost Iowa now, and karma finds you. But I'm just amazed that Iowa keeps winning. Coach Patterson's been watching it longer than I have, and
my comment, Tom, is we have mastered the art of winning ugly.
Yes, and that's the old Chicago White Sox back in 83, I think, was the winning ugly team. And this Kirk made an Earl Weaver reference, Coach Patterson, which you will appreciate. So we could throw out old Baltimore Oriole manager references.
I grew up as a Yankee fan, but I do remember Earl Weaver.
Yeah, yep.
Tom,
So
I want to ask you first of all about Cade, because that's what people want to talk about, and especially reaction post-game press.
It's weird. Yeah,
So
it's weird.
Can you explain why he was not involved with the pregame senior day ceremonies?
Yeah, Kirk said he just opted not to participate in it today. Didn't want to be a distraction, so he just opted to not participate. So that's his choice.
I've never
his
heard
decision.
of that not being a distraction. A lot of guys are getting their roses right in their their parents. That seems like
It is-
quite frankly, that sounds like an excuse. I don't know the real reason, but that just sounds like an excuse to me, Tom. I don't
And I do also think he probably, just me, I think he probably just wanted to avoid getting booed.
I just
He would have
cannot
100% got
imagine
booed.
he would have gotten booed. I know that that's out there. I
I
just
don't think
can't,
the fans would do that.
I just can't imagine them booing him. I
Mm.
just that would be such a disgraceful display if Iowa
I've
fans
I've seen it. I've seen it happen
Sure.
before.
during a senior day ceremony, you've seen a player
Oh,
get
yeah.
booed.
Oh yeah, not
I mean,
roundly, but just some smattering of boos.
Well, I heard a rousing ovation for Spencer Petras, and
Yep.
he was one of the most criticized athletes ever.
Oh, I think it's reached a different level with Cade. The vitriol with Cade is like why we're talking about this, because people are just obsessed with. Yeah, I see the comment. Yeah, I think Cade's going to probably enter the portal. That's what I think he's going to do. So, I don't think this is the end of the line for him.
Yeah,
So,
be very clear, I'm not criticizing Cade. I just don't that excuse. I don't buy that. That smells to me, and I don't think the fans would have booed him. And if they would have booed him, anybody who would have booed Cade McNamara ought to be ashamed. And so if that's what he honestly felt, then that's really pathetic on the fans' part. The people that have been loud enough to make him feel that way. Tom Kirk, I'm sure, was thrilled with Drew Stevens' composure to
Oh,
make
yeah.
53.
Talk about the redemption story. There were, 1 year ago, he was benched in a game that ended 13-10. This time he kicks the game winner in a game that ends 13-10, and has a turnover late in the game that leads to the game-winning field goal. I mean, and that turnover was Ethan Herkett intercepting a pass. This time it was Max Llewellyn with a huge play, forcing a fumble, recovering it. Good for Drew. Good for Drew. He's grown up a lot in the last year, I think. And he called them. He called Raiola. What do you call it? Mini Mahomes. I think is what he called him in his presser. Mini Mahomes. Yes. When Mini Mahomes fumbled, it was funny.
Yeah, because apparently that's been a talk. I didn't know this until I did a show with Mark Rogers and we had a Nebraska guy on. Apparently that's been a very big talking point with opposing fan bases this year, that he's a wannabe Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah,
I mean,
I term it like cosplaying Pat Mahomes is what I term it. I mean, he does all the same mannerisms. He does all the same. It's kind of creepy.
He's worn number 15 for a long time, but he does a lot of the mannerisms, I think, are intentional. He probably does look up to Pat. I'm not criticizing the guy for it, but
no,
that's fair.
He's a good player. He's really good.
Did you guys talk to Matt Rule?
I did not. I know he had a session with the Nebraska media.
I'm surprised that you didn't. Were there Iowa people that opted to be a part of that and ask him about behavior?
See, what happens is we're in there with the Iowa players at the same time that Matt Rule is having his press conference.
Got it. Okay. That's
we have to. It's an either or situation, and Jay's talking about this thing at the exact time when Matt Rule's in there talking in another room.
You should have just ran away from Jay and ran straight in. But no, that's interesting. Don, do you have anything in particular for Tom? I got a couple of things in the chat before we let him go, but
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was curious if Tom had any idea what Coach Rule had said, because I did read on the comments that he was disgraceful with what he said, or the writer had said. The writer had said, "I lost respect for Coach Rule based on what he said." I don't know. I have any idea what he said, but I am curious, of course, as to what he might have said that would be that offensive.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody even asked him about it, so I'm not sure. I will find out from one of my Nebraska friends, and I'm sure we'll find out more details. But I haven't had a chance to dig into it yet. We just got back up here, so yeah, it's a little bit of drama. Also, Brian Allen is going to be done for the year. Surgery coming up, and then he's going to have another surgery in January. He's been playing through some things, so Kirk said he's done for the year. So that's another guy. And Caleb Johnson kind of indicated he's going to play in the bowl game. Maybe he didn't rule it out.
Okay.
He kind of the way he talked today was he thinks he's going to play, but of course that can change. I mean,
Sure.
you know, nobody's going to blame him if he just opts out of the bowl game.
Tom, do you think Tampa Bay is even more likely now than it was before tonight?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's the only way Tampa doesn't turn out is if somehow Indy gets booted out of the playoff, the CFP. And I don't know that that's going to happen unless they lost to Purdue. And if they lost to Purdue, they probably should get booted out of the playoff, as bad as Purdue is. So
I'm sorry, when you said Indy, you meant Indiana.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about Notre Dame. That's what confused me.
Yeah, no. Just the Hoosiers. I think the Hoosiers are in the CFP, but I think if they lost, obviously, to a bad Purdue team, they'd be out. So, yeah.
And by the way, multiple people saying in the live chat that the coin toss was caught on video, and there's video of this incident, at least one of the incidents, circulating on social media. So we'll have to check that out here.
Yeah, I'll have to look for that. Yeah, I'm just kind of doing everything in real time. I don't like dive into social very much. So, at least in terms of, right moment.
Spaceboy wants to know about Jacob Gill. He did return after getting rolled up on earlier in the game. Can you give us an update on Jacob?
Yeah, it seems like he's okay. Y.A. Black got back in there. He got rolled up on too. So, but he was limited for sure. I mean, there was Jeremiah Pitmo was in there a lot in the second half. So, and they were doing some other different things where Deontay was going into the play D tackle, and Max Wellen was in there doing different. I mean, they were just putting it together with duct tape at that point with the defensive line. It's just I still can't believe they won this game. 5 first downs the entire night. And Caleb Johnson, I mean, somebody, and I don't think this is crazy comparison, but that's like Cooper DeJean a year ago against Minnesota, right?
I still think Cooper's was better, but it was impressive.
Yeah,
it was impressive.
But it was, yeah. Coops was probably more impressive just because it was in like the final 2 minutes of a game that would have won it. And Caleb's was earlier in the second, in the fourth quarter. But holy cow. I mean, when I went back and I looked at that run, and my goodness, how do you, that I asked Caleb if he should be in New York, and he just kind of demurred a bit on it and just like, well, I don't know, just not aw shucksing it, but kind of. But he should be in New York. I mean, scored a touchdown in every game. He's just had a. I still think they may have scored that play wrong, and that it should be a run and not a pass. Coach, what did you think? Do you think it was a behind the line or lateral or an actual pass?
Well, it was definitely thrown behind the line. But
Yeah.
I thought it was a swing pass that was intentionally thrown slightly downfield. That's how I saw it. I think it was correctly awarded as a forward pass. I could be wrong. I haven't looked at it since. But as it came out in real time, it never crossed my mind that it might be a backwards pass.
Yeah, I don't know. In the moment, I thought it was like, well, give Caleb credit for a run so he can get more rushing yards. But regardless, just an incredible performance from an all-time great running back in Iowa football history for a single season. I mean, it's incredible what he's done.
Tom, can you give us an update on where the quarterback situation is health-wise? It sounds like maybe Cade McNamara I would be shocked if he plays in the bowl game. I think you would probably agree with that.
Yes.
And is it fair to say he may enter the portal before the bowl game?
If I were a betting man, I would say yes. He's probably going to be in the portal by the time this gets all sorted out. That's my guess. And Sully was back, but he wasn't back, if that makes sense. That's kind of the way Kirk termed it. I mean, he was, in case of emergency, break glass, he could probably go out there, but he couldn't move around the way he was more comfortable moving around. So I suspect bowl game, we'll see Sully. And he'll probably start, but I think they'll probably try and have him compete for the job, though, too.
Is the situation, based on your understanding, Tom, with Marco Lainez, that he's still got the cast on, and he was just available last week as a total emergency quarterback?
Yep. Yeah. Tim Lester keeps joking about that Max White was the actual second string quarterback last week.
I'm surprised Marco why was he even there?
I don't know, because he literally could not go under center. He was wearing a cast. He still has the cast on. He just put black tape on it this week.
So is there an anticipation that he would be available, do you think, by end of the month?
I would guess he'll probably have that cast off.
Yeah. Okay.
I think he'll probably be the third quarterback.
Maybe you have three guys available, though, is my point. Hopefully all healthy. Hopefully all healthy at that point.
Yeah, I think so. Hopefully. That'd be nice to have so Max White could go back to being your fourth string quarterback again, right?
And where does
Tyler Girardi?
Tyler, yeah, where does he figure into all that?
Maybe he'll go back to being a guy who's working on trying to be the next Brett Greenwood or something, or Quinn Schulte.
I think that.
By the way, speaking of Brett was at the game tonight, and it was awesome to see him.
Great. How's Brett doing?
He's doing great, and he was upstairs and with his family, and got to spend some time with Brett and his family, and it just always makes me happy when I see Brett and his family.
Absolutely. Tom, we appreciate you being here. I know it's late. Get some sleep. Get your writing in or whatever you need to do in the press.
And a little bit of work to do, and then we'll get a few hours sleep. But
you get a Saturday. You get a Saturday mostly off, and I'm assuming you know that the women took care of business down in Cancun, so that's possible.
I heard that they won by 20, which is awesome, and I assume, I haven't seen a box score, but I assume Lucy didn't play and
Lucy
win by 20.
Lucy did not play, and they held BYU to 48, and Leah Guyton was 3 of 3 from 3, had 11 points.
There we go. This might be a blessing in disguise.
Absolutely. Tom, appreciate you being here, sir. Travel safe. We'll talk.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate Tom being here. HawkeyeReport.com on 3 Network. All right. Wow. Lots of stuff. I know people want me to show the Matt Rule video. We'll get to that. I want to get to some super chats here first. We need to get to the super chats first. Scott, rinse and repeat from last year. Hawkeyes do it again. Way to go, man. Oregon coach, you two do a great job with the post-game shows. Thanks for all you do. I do appreciate that, Scott. Very much appreciated, and thank you for donating. And I apologize, Jack. I just saw the super chat, but because you're asking and it's a super chat, let's ask Don this question. So he wanted to know about how do you have the improvement in points with one game over 200 yards passing? How do you have the improvement in points? What does that mean, Don? Am I misreading that?
Yeah, he's saying, how do you end up generating more points when you still have an ineffective passing game? Well, the key, of course, is we had a lot of explosive plays in the running game. We were able to generate many more than we've had in the last couple of years, primarily through the run. And we still had improvement in the pass, too.
They did have improvement in the pass, and they were more efficient in the passing game. Part of the problem with the passing game, I think part of the issue with why it never really took off, they dealt with some serious injuries at quarterback and receiver. That's not an excuse, and we're going to get to the excuses here in a little bit, and I want to chime in on my 2 cents on that. But thank you, Jack, for the super chat there. And then also D. Rollifson, appreciate the super chat. NIL money needed to replace all those seniors. Swarm, appreciate that. Erica says there are videos of these things on Twitter, so we will also get to that. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air.
Hey, how's it going?
Going good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, I was just at the game. So what are y'all's thoughts on that doink off of the upright to win the game?
The doink off of the upright. I guess you were at a different game than we were because I didn't see a doink.
It did doink off. Drew Stevens' field goal doinked off.
I'm sorry you're
You
mistaken.
didn't see it hit the upright?
Nope. Wait, I saw the replay a dozen times. It did not. It cleared.
Oh.
It was
Okay.
close, but it cleared.
From my perspective, it looked like it doinked, but that might just be my bad. It's what are y'all's thoughts on so Nebraska pretty much beat us in every single statistic.
Yep.
But that's just a masterclass from Kirk, in my opinion. You know, just being able to coach the team in the right way towards the end of the game. I think that's just classic Kirk Ferentz football. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, Coach Patterson brought that out earlier. Don, is that a fair assessment? Classic Kirk performance and escape. Nebraska snatching. What do they call that? So you snatch victory out of the hands of defeat, and you snatch defeat out of the hands of victory, right?
Yep.
Is that fair, Don? Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I suppose so. I just felt when we got back into the game, I felt if we had to win it in overtime, I was hopeful that we wouldn't have to go to that far. And you think about it, if you think back, I made the comment though when Nebraska got the ball for their last possession, I said they're not going to. I'm talking about before the turnover. I said they're going to go ahead and try to win it in regulation, and I wouldn't fault them for that. I think they have maybe a minute or more on the clock. How much time was left?
I'd have to look.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't think I have it written down either in my notes.
But honestly, in my opinion, Kirk, a lot of Iowa fans are probably going to be mad that this game was even close. But I think when you take a look back, you have a fourth string quarterback, probably not a lot of experience here. Definitely not a lot of starts under his belt. I think I was looking into it before the game. He had one touchdown pass at Colorado State, and it was kind of a pass that he just lobbed up for grabs. He didn't have much experience at all. You had a few injuries in the defensive backfield. Just kind of Kirk Ferentz being able to coach his team in the right direction just honestly saved this game. And I think a lot of fans are going to blame a lot of things on Kirk, but at the end of the day, there's not a whole lot that he can control. And I still think that, he really coached his team to gain this victory. And that's just my opinion, but
No, good stuff. Absolutely would agree with you. And this Kirk has become the master of winning the games that maybe he's not supposed to win. And yeah, he usually loses one game that he's probably supposed to win. In this case, this year, he probably lost
Iowa
two.
State. And,
he lost two this year.
I mean, talking to a lot of my buddies this year, I said, he's probably going to lose a couple of games that he shouldn't this year. And unfortunately, 2 or 3 games is what I thought, so he beat my expectations. But usually that seems to happen, though. Like when Kirk has a team that looks like they really are destined to be something great, kind of like, after 2015, you're coming off a 12-0 season. 2016 kind of was just kind of a letdown. And I think a lot of fans were expecting this year after, last year going to the Big Ten championship with Deacon Hill. I think a lot of people expected this team healthy to go kind of somewhere similar, but I think most fans are going to think that's a letdown. But I think just overall this year, kind of a letdown, but I don't know. What do you guys think on that?
I've expressed my views. We haven't gotten Don's views. I mean, we're not done with the bowl game yet. I think 8-4 is a massive disappointment.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I'm not going to sugarcoat it because they won tonight, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due for Kirk and his coaching and finding a way to win this game, and give credit to everybody involved, including Coach Ferentz. He gets a lot of the credit, just like when they lose, he gets a lot of the blame. But 8-4 is a massive disappointment with everything they brought back, and with the schedule as favorable as it was comparative to the rest of the conference. Huge disappointment being 8-4.
Yeah, of course.
So, Don, do you have anything to add on that?
Well, preseason polls would project that we would lose to Ohio State, and that's the only game based on preseason polls that we were not favored to win.
Yeah, and the way they lost the games they lost, I think, is the other frustrating part about this. You're up 13-0 on Iowa State in the first half. Should have been up probably 17 or 21-0 in that first half. You can convert in the red zone, inside the 10. In some case, I think in one case inside the 5. And then you have the UCLA Michigan State games. Those are two teams that are not going to. Well, I guess I don't know about Michigan State. They play a game tomorrow for bowl eligibility, but two very mediocre teams that you lose to on the road. And defensively, right? I mean, it's the defense that showed the major holes in both of those games. I don't really fault the offense. Struggled in the first half against Michigan State and struggled at times against UCLA, but man, just a little unorthodox in the way they lost these games this year. But yeah, like you said earlier, caller, the history with some of these hyped seasons where you're coming off a solid year and you return a lot is to maybe get a little overhyped and then you lose a couple more games. 2010, 2016 would be two examples, and add 2024 to the mix.
Yeah, it's funny because the years that you're not expecting much, then they just kind of surprise you. But I hope next year is one of those years.
Absolutely.
Hopefully.
Well, appreciate you calling in, sir.
We got to make some big pickups.
No, absolutely. Appreciate you calling in, and thanks for calling after the game, and we'll maybe talk to you after the bowl game.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on here.
Thank you, sir. All right. I want to just address this real quick because I had some people going after one of our callers earlier, and everybody, for the record, everybody has a right to their opinion. All right. Let's just make that clear. So Bill's opinion is that 8-4 with the quarterback injury situation is acceptable. And I respect your opinion, Bill. I don't agree with your opinion because they lost the game against Iowa State with a healthy running back room, or quarterback room, excuse me. They lost the game against Ohio State with a healthy quarterback room. They lost the game against Michigan State with a healthy quarterback room. So 3 of the 4 losses came with healthy quarterbacks. Can we just remember that for a second? Brendan Sullivan got knocked out of the UCLA game, and Sullivan relieved Cade McNamara during the Northwestern game, a game in which they won. So they were totally healthy through 3 losses. And 3 losses, in my opinion, was disappointing. I think 10-2 should have been the expectation, was the expectation from my point of view heading into the year. So I disagree with that. I know we're living in the moment, but the quarterback situation is what the quarterback situation was. They still played, down the stretch of this season as they dealt with the injuries at quarterback. They played a pretty soft tail end of the schedule. They played a Maryland team that's not very good. They played UCLA, who's not very good. They played Northwestern, who's not very good. Honestly, the best team they played down the stretch had a bye week. Best team they played was the Nebraska team they played tonight. And I give Kirk Ferentz a lot of credit because they won this game tonight. And I didn't know if they'd win. I had them winning by 3, but I don't agree with that. But let's have a little respect to Alex's opinion earlier because he has a right to say that. Now, Spaceboy says 8-4 is acceptable considering the issues. Again, I have no issue with the opinion. I simply disagree. To say that the call is no longer acceptable because you don't agree with the opinion that was stated politely and I think opinion-based. I think Alex made that very clear. That was his opinion. I'm not going to take a caller off the air because you don't agree with the opinion. So, and that's, by the way, that's not just Alex's perspective. He's not the only one that has that opinion. And Paul, same thing. I'm not going to say a caller's wrong just because other people disagree. So you can have your take and Alex can have his take, but I believe 8-4 is a very disappointing season. Injuries aside, every year we talk about injuries, Don. This is football. Now, they were hit hard in the quarterback room with injuries down the stretch of the season. No one's debating that. But 3 of the 4 losses came before that occurred.
And truthfully, up to that Michigan State game, as a team, we didn't have an unusual amount of injuries either. We were relatively healthy.
Very healthy to that point.
You're right.
So, I mean, yeah, it could have been worse. They could have ended at 6-6 or 7-5. But I'm simply saying I had already deemed it a disappointing season prior to almost all of these injuries, and especially, most certainly, the quarterback situation. So let's just make sure before we accuse other people of not having perspective, that we ourselves, in fact, have some degree of perspective.
There's another way we could look at it. Based on what I know, Corey, I would say the schedule that Indiana had was very similar to our schedule. And here they are with 1 loss. And for that matter, a lot of convincing wins. So you can do it. I'm not saying it's easy. We know it's not easy. But Indiana's gotten it done. And we had every reason to believe we could get it done because we've done it in the past. This year, for whatever reason, we weren't quite as good at finding a way to win.
And I think it's so wonderful that Iowa football has a fan base and Kirk Ferentz has followers that are willing to, when they're in the moment after a win like this in a rivalry game where you win in dramatic fashion and overcome the odds, and you're crying in the locker room and you got a bunch of happy fans and there's a swarm at the end of the game. I'm so happy that everybody can rah behind Kirk Ferentz. But that is the definition of living in the moment, okay? If we're talking about the macro, which is what our caller Alex was talking about earlier, it's a totally different conversation, and this has to be taken with a grain of salt and measured equally to every other game over the 12-game season. And he was talking about the bigger picture, not just this year, but where we're at in the grand scheme of things, 25 years into a coaching tenure. So tenure, excuse me. So that's what I have to say. You don't have to agree with me or agree with him, but just felt the need to speak up on that one. D. Rollison, Swarm 22 revenue only $2.14 million. ISU We Will Collective 22 revenue $659K. Brad needs deep pockets to buy talent. We are a pro team. Appreciate the super chat, D. Rollison. And Erica, Corey just tagged you on 2 handshake videos, so we will share that here in just a second. And do appreciate this super chat as well, Erica. She says injury is not an excuse. I'm so tired of hearing that. 8-4 is one. Let's see, is that 10,000 or don't see a comma in there. I believe that's 100,000% a disappointing season, given returning personnel and the schedule. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call line. Let's go to Doug, who's been on hold a long time. Doug, thank you for calling in.
Yeah, I'm very happy tonight. This is to all the Nebraska fans. Nothing, things aren't moving and shaking like Tommy Frazier anymore because Tommy Frazier's 50 years old and fat. So,
oh, thank you for that, Doug. Appreciate it.
Growing up in Central Iowa, you'd be surprised, Corey. I hated Nebraska a lot more than I hated Iowa State. They won the national championship when I was in 5th grade, 6th grade, and 8th grade. And Kirk's first game was against Nebraska. We lost 7-42. And I also looked up because the first caller said something that was wrong because I know Don beat Nebraska as the first game in 81, and then you guys lost to Iowa State, and then went to the Rose Bowl that year.
Beat UCLA that year too.
Yep. And I Wikipedia that just to double check, but he was right. Since they've joined the Big Ten, his thing was right, whatever he said. So your first caller was right, but in 81 it wasn't that way. But always have to be smartest man in the room for some reason.
That's an incredible stat, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Don, you missed that, but a young caller, Jack, who called in earlier in the season, brought up how until this year, well, and this Doug just corrected us, but what year was it the last time that happened?
81.
So
Don's third year at Iowa.
dating back to 81, every year Iowa beat Iowa State, they also beat Nebraska, and every year they lost to Iowa State, they also lost to Nebraska.
I wasn't aware. I do recall for those Iowa State fans that are listening, I do recall 15 consecutive wins.
You made that's the reason why I hated Nebraska, because we just always beat Iowa State. And there were so many Central Iowa bandwagon people that would just jump on that Nebraska bandwagon that I've watched get off. I used to call them, because if you look back in history, they used to be, their nickname used to not be Corn Huskers. It used to be Bug Eaters. You can look that up. They used to be called the Nebraska Bug Eaters. I'm not making that up. You can look it up. Google it.
Well, just because you find it on Google doesn't necessarily mean.
Oh, I'll send you a link or something, Corey. But yeah, I was actually, for Alex, I was first going to kind of say he was wrong, but he's right, because I was going to say, well, we're starting to sound like Nebraska fans in 2003 when they got rid of Frank Solich, and all he did was win 8 games every year. But the difference is Kirk's also 70. We have to have an exit strategy. He can't coach another 5-10 years.
Very fair point.
I mean, can he? I mean,
but Doug, can I just bring this up for a second, because we're an hour and a half into the show. We just struck midnight, so.
Thank you for not taking me off whenever I say something dumb.
Say that again.
Oh, I was going to say, people wanting Alex kicked off. Alex made very intelligent and he was doing.
They're living. It's because they're so happy. They're just so warm and fuzzy because Kirk won a game, and that's great. And I'll celebrate with you. But there's got to be balance and perspective. If this show is anything, I hope it brings balance and perspective to people. Because I'm not going to sit here and just, if you want a show that night in and night out comes on here and just is, popping confetti and drinking champagne, that's not what this is. Not after a win over Nebraska 13-10. That's not what it's going to be. So anyways, but I said earlier, Doug, in response to Alex's comment, that I think there's a greater chance that Beth takes action against Fran McCaffrey.
Me too.
Now, we haven't talked about that on the men's basketball show, but as I've given it more careful consideration, I do think that we may not be as far off from that happening. I think we're a long ways off from it happening with Kirk, but I could see Beth making a move after this year, especially if they don't do anything in the postseason. Would you agree with that, Doug?
100%. I didn't really want to bring this up, but I might ask Coach, because his perspective might matter. Do you think it's weird that and I always will say family comes first. Do you think it's weird that a Division I men's basketball coach would be 1,800 miles away from his team on Thanksgiving? I just thought that's kind of weird. And I don't want to get into that too much, but I just think that says something about having a foot outside out saying you're not 100% committed to your own team.
I don't know what our immediate schedule is, but it's hard for me to imagine in season that you'd be away from your team for any length of time at all.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we know that. We know that's the case, Doug.
Yes, he said that on Monday on his Zoom call, and he's he was down there.
He's probably got a foot out the door. I mean, we've said this before. He's probably got and I'm sure, hey, we've been talking about basketball for 30 seconds. I'm sure you and I are getting ripped because this is a football show, even though it's a private show. But no, I agree with you on that. And the reason I'm bringing it up in relation to Kirk Ferentz is because there's just no way Beth's not going to step in 1 year after she basically fired Brian Ferentz. She's not going to step in and say, well, Kirk, 8-4 is unacceptable. You had too much talent. You're done. Do you know how stupid that would be from a career perspective for a young AD? No way does she do that.
I don't think you can, and going back to what you're saying, this is trying not to be a basketball person right now, but a little bit just saying that's been a lot on your plate to hire both head coaches in the same year. So we'll have to see what exactly happens. But I think she kind of knows. But Kirk is not above approach. This program belongs to you guys that are not wanting 8-4 as much as it belongs to anyone that donates and is there on a 20-degree day. You do deserve a voice. And I've said some dumb stuff before about maybe, hey, but anyone that was there at that stadium and cheering on the Hawks today. You guys need to be commended because, that's amazing. But also, I think we should be trying to play for the college football playoffs. And is Kirk the best option going forward to make the playoffs, rebuilding the team? And not saying that because he's not a good coach, but he's been here since 1999. He's here before the century.
Yeah. Doug, is Fran McCaffrey the best guy to send Iowa to deep in a NCAA tournament run?
Again, Beth needs to talk to both these men and kind of figure out what the future is and what their plans are. If Kirk is going to I want to respect Kirk and I want to respect Iowa athletics. I want to respect everyone. If you want to enforce your will and believe you're more important in the program, then that's your decision. I don't know. Like, again, I don't know what I want to ask, but I was like, trying to figure out a good question to ask for Don, just because I don't want to say it the wrong way, but Don's had to deal with, when you move on, when, maybe your career or finding a new direction or taking those jobs. I mean, I'm not saying necessarily retire, but, when it is time to go, I'm just don't have what I had when I was 50, I guess that would be my question for Don. Hopefully that was a respectful question, but like, just when do you know that you're not the same man that you were 20 years ago? Or maybe you never have felt that way, Don. Maybe you feel the same as you did when you were 40. I don't know. But
here recently, a good guy to talk about would be our coach at Northern Iowa.
Yes.
Because Mark Farley is an outstanding coach for many, many years. But here's the truth. Whether it be Hayden Fry or Mark Farley or Kirk Ferentz, as one gets older, the job becomes more difficult, primarily because it's hard to promise recruits you're going to be there for 4 or 5 years. Not to mention, if you have really quality coaches, they have to worry about what's best for them too. That's why a guy like Barry Alvarez leaves Iowa, because he wasn't going to be a defensive coordinator at Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Notre Dame, he had success there, and he was off to Wisconsin. Dan McCarty the same way, Bill Snyder the same way. Now, I will admit, nowadays, the salary structure is such, maybe you can keep a guy, maybe he'll even be resistant to leaving, as long as you can pay him maybe better than what he can attract anywhere else. And I think it's entirely possible that some of our coaches, even though they've been pursued by other schools, those other schools haven't been able to match the current salary that they have here. Maybe that's one more reason that they've stayed. One reason they've stayed, obviously, is they have great loyalty to the program. They have great loyalty to Coach Ferentz, as they should. But what makes it a little more tolerable is maybe they're making as much or more here than what they would make somewhere else, even if it were a promotion. Mm. That's the reality of where we are nowadays, I think. So it's just difficult to keep great coaches.
My last question had to do with bowl opt-outs, how you guys felt about bowl opt-outs, and I'll leave you on that.
Thank you, Doug.
Well, I appreciate guys like Jack Campbell and Sam Laporta, and I'm pretty sure Jay Higgins might fall into that same category, because I don't want to put words in Jay's mouth, but knowing what I know about Jay Higgins, I find it hard to believe that he might opt out of our bowl game this year. If he does, I'll support him, but I'd be surprised if he feels that way. By the way, maybe that's one reason the Detroit Lions are doing well, is because they have the kind of character on their team that's reflected by Sam Laporta and Jack Campbell.
And I think you got to give credit to their position coach as well, because it seems to run through the linebacker room, whether it be I'm trying to think if we, as Iowa, had a linebacker opt out. I know Justin Jacobs left and surprised some fans when he left and entered the portal and took off for Oregon. But in general, I think Josie Jewell, I know that was sort of before the opt-out thing was real popular. But recently, I mean, Jack Campbell's a great example. I know Seth Benson didn't have a great NFL career in front of him. I don't think Jay Higgins, there's any chance he opts out early. And in general, I think defensive players tend to play. I mean, I know Kayvon Merriweather left early. Iowa's had Tyler Goodson opted out, but give credit to Kirk and that whole staff for how they manage things. Caller on the phone line, we're going to put you on a brief hold, and we'll get back to you here shortly. Okay, let's see. Did we answer Doug's question? I think we did. We have a super chat here from Lemansky. He says 8-4 is underwhelming. Thank you for your opinion, Corey. As UI graduate, however, please, the young men showed character and pride this season. Love you, Coach, for your commitment. Absolutely. And that's where we have to have balance. And this is where I hope we can strike it. And I think, Lemansky, you've done a good job of that. We can two things can be true at the same time. This was a great win tonight and a gutsy win, a character win. It was a great moment, a great night for Iowa. And the players, you got to be happy for how they finished their careers. But as a whole, underwhelming is a great word. Maybe a little more docile than I deemed it. I dubbed it earlier, but that's a good way to explain it. So appreciate the super chat, Lemansky, and do appreciate your support. D. Rullifson, love Iowa. Perspective is we rank 31 in population, 30 in GDP. We aren't Alabama, aren't Georgia, Texas, or California. Top 20 should feel good. Top 10 is incredible. Well, they were top 20. They'd be vying for a playoff spot. But in most years, I mean, yeah, they won 10 games last year, won 10 games in 2021. They were 6-2 in 2020. They won 10 games, 11 games in 2019. So nobody's questioning what Kirk has accomplished as it relates to wins. I'm just talking about this season right here and now. And for the record, I have not come on this show and said Kirk Ferentz needs to be relieved of his duties. That was said by an earlier caller. But I do think it's fair to respect that take if someone feels that way 25 years into a tenure. I just don't see anything wrong with having that opinion. David wants to know, Don, if you had some hot chocolate up in the press box.
Didn't have a drop.
And let's see, Spaceboy74 says, what do you think Kirk said to the team at halftime?
Well, I've always said this about coaches, and I'm pretty sure Kirk is in this category. You react, but you don't overreact. So my guess is, in so many ways, it was business as usual. I'm sure he had some choice words for the offense in particular. It's unacceptable what we've done at half. I don't know how many first downs we had, maybe 3, maybe no more than 3. I can't recall.
5 for the game, Don.
5 for the game. I think we had 3 at the half, as I recall.
Okay.
But the bottom line is that we'd done a terrible job of staying on the field on offense, and we had some difficulty in getting off the field on defense. But having said that, hats off to the defense. When Notre Dame got in the plus territory, when Nebraska got into plus territory, Nebraska had difficulty getting down the field. They made yardage against us, but in general, it was from the wrong end of the field. And while I'm thinking of it, Corey, we need to give credit to our punter also, because that field position we had on the 4-yard line, that all started with a great punt. That ball was up there a long time. You've heard me say a lot of punt returners lose their nerve when the hang time gets over 5 seconds, and that one might have been over 5 seconds. It was a beautiful punt, and clearly, even if the punt return didn't touch it or the next man didn't touch it, the next Nebraska player thought it had been touched by a Nebraska player, and that's why the ball ended up grazing off him, is because he thought it was a live ball. But it all started with a great punt. That's my point.
It certainly did, and that's, once again, something that you feel like would only happen to Nebraska. I'm just watching the replay because I was yelling out when it happened. I said, he did not touch that. And I said it in live action. I'm like, they're not getting this ball. Little did I realize the third guy to the ball put that hand in there, and just split second before Iowa.
The first 2 people that were nearby did not touch it. You're right. I wish this way you're talking about finding ways to get it done. On Wednesday, I had a chance to say hi with Coach Parker, and Phil is such a good coach. I have great respect for that man. And he knows, of course, about analytics. And I said, you know, here's what I feel about our defense, Phil. If we can win on turnovers and we can limit their explosive plays, we're going to beat them. We were +2 on turnovers, and they had 3 plays in the 20s, but none in the 30s or 40s or 50s. And Nebraska can put those kind of plays on people if you're not careful. We did a good job of only allowing 3 plays in the 20s, a 25, a 23, and a 20, as I recall, and that's it. So even though they have a dangerous offense, we did a pretty good job of containing them. And the thing that saved us, of course, was the 72-yard swing pass. And if it was a backward pass, then I guess we'd maybe petition to count it as rushing yardage. But I'm pretty sure it was a forward pass. It's meant to be a forward pass. Not supposed to go backwards. I'm pretty sure that one didn't go backwards either.
Okay, so there's a couple things I want to get to. So here Jason says, I came here to hear a celebration, but you sound like Iowa lost. Well, last I checked, with all due respect, Jason, this does not say Iowa-Nebraska celebration. It says Iowa-Nebraska postgame. So you come here for analysis. If you don't want that or objectivity from Coach and I, then you'll have to go somewhere else because we're not going to just sit here and, like I said, pop confetti and champagne bottles for 3 hours. So just not what the show is. You don't have to watch, but do appreciate you being here and for commenting, for being a part of the show. Let's see. So before we get to our next caller, I do want to thank our sponsor, one being Ascent Nutrition. I've talked about them over on the women's show, but if people have not checked out this great company, it's owned by a Hawkeye graduate, Lance Shuttler. He graduated from U of I. He's from a small town here, actually not far from us here in Story County. But Lance is as passionate about football as he is helping people benefit their lives, their respiratory systems, their immune system, helping them have clearer thoughts throughout the day. You can read all about their this bundle between their pine needle extract and their humic and fulvic acid. We're calling it their detox bundle. And right now through next Tuesday, you get 20% off by using the code Hawkeyes20. So this is a limited time deal, folks. First of all, read all about these great products and the rigorous third-party testing they go through. They also have a 90-day money-back guarantee. Again, support all of these many things you see on the screen and more. Visit goascentnutrition.com, use the /Hawkeyes, and use that code Hawkeyes20 for 20% off your total order. Respiratory support, immune health, brain clarity, healthy detox, gut function, etc., etc. Check it all out. goascentnutrition.com/Hawkeyes. Also, Iowa Smokehouse, tasting is believing. Go to their website and get your orders in. Get it delivered right to your doorstep. iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes. That's just Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com for 15% off your order of beef sticks. Perhaps it's their jerky, their steak bites, their salsas, their barbecue sauces. It's all delicious. You'll never need to look anywhere else for snacking on game day or any other day. Use that code for 15% off. It's the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com. And Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Call Brad on Monday for a free quote, and it's Cyber Monday. So make sure you get all your shopping done, but also shop for some good insurance rates with Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. You can visit his website, bradvanmeter.com, or call him at 515-256-6480. That's 515-256-6480. Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Don, we talked about our RTI Threads player of the game, and RTI Threads has been with us throughout the year, and a couple of guys on this list, boy, they've been impressive. One being Zach Lutmer on special teams. He made at least one big play today on kick coverage. We saw Jacob Gill, who went down briefly with an injury, but somebody commented earlier how solid he's been. Aaron Graves has a decision to make on his hands as well. Carson Shire has been dinged up, but he's got a bright future. Check all of the apparel of those guys and more out at rtithreads.com. You can click on the NIL tab or just use the /NIL, rtithreads.com/NIL, and shop RTI Threads and these Hawkeye athletes today. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line? Hello, you're on the air.
I just want to say, so what do you guys think about Cade McNamara not coming out for senior night?
Well, we talked a little bit about that earlier, Don. I guess I forgot what you said about an hour ago.
Well,
how do you feel about Cade not coming out there for that?
every player has a choice with whether or not to participate, but on a personal level, I'm disappointed because I like to think that the fans would like to have the chance to thank Cade as well as his teammates for their commitment to Iowa football. Maybe Tom's right. Maybe it'd be a little too much in the boo category. I don't know that. I know the majority of the fans would still be appreciative and supportive. All of them, I'm sure, probably not. In their defense of those that might choose to boo, they probably showed up drunk to begin with, and they're not really very responsible for their actions at that point in time. I think most fans would have been supportive and would have appropriately applauded Cade for being part of this program for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. The fan base that's on the message boards and on social media, they are the minority. Okay, let's make that very clear. I don't know what percentage, but I'd say probably 75% of the fans that are there in person are not ripping Cade McNamara or, for that matter, Spencer Petras or Deacon Hill or any of the other players that have been criticized here in recent time. Most fans are good. As Luke Bryan said in his hit single, I believe most people are good.
Yeah, I just think it sends a bad message. He didn't come out.
Yeah, it sends a bad message.
Collect his flowers.
Yeah, especially given the fact that Cade McNamara accepted a lot of money to come here and play. Yes, it doesn't look good at all. Yep. You're right about that.
And then my next question is, Don, how would you offset the offense when they're stacked the box against Caleb Johnson?
Well, you gotta find the best possible. Even if they're not playing man coverage, you still get a lot of off coverage, a lot of one-on-one coverage. Whether it's zone or man. If it is man, you better be prepared to use man beaters to get people open. But the good thing about attacking man coverage, you only have one football, so all you need to do is line them up so that you can gain the best possible matchup that you can find. In other words, you put one of your best players, if you can maneuver it the right way, you put them against one of their lesser players. That's the mismatch you're looking for. You only need one football. You only have to throw it to one person. So you look for that best matchup, you take advantage of that. And there are other things to do other than just one-on-one matchups. You get into rub routes and things like that, changing direction. There are a lot of tricky ways about attacking man coverage. And you better have a lot of good ideas about how to do it, because otherwise you're going to face, until you can prove that you can attack it, you're going to see more and more of it. But the bottom line, we just need to be able to, if they're going to load the box, whether it be zone or man, we need to find ways to get the best matchups going and to throw the routes that give us a chance to be efficient in gaining first downs. It doesn't have to be throws way down the field. If they're in off coverage, of course, it's high percentage shorts and outs and slants, things like that. They can be routes that are thrown no deeper than 5, 6, 7 yards. Put it in the capable hands of a receiver. It doesn't have to be a wide out. Corey, here's a positive tonight. We saw a little more usage of the tight ends. And it was helpful for us because that's one of the things that gave the few first downs we had were often tied into a route that was thrown no more than 5, 6, 7 yards downfield.
Yeah, I agree. They went away from the tight ends this last year.
Well, we saw a little more involvement tonight. I don't know what the numbers are, but at least there were several passes caught by tight ends today. And let's face it, we were struggling to, if we had to hold the ball for any length of time, we had difficulty throwing and catching with accuracy. We had difficulty with protection sometimes, got passes batted down, those kind of things. So one of the smartest things we did is throw some quicker balls not necessarily the wideouts, but the inside receivers. And let's face it, the smartest thing we did all night was throw a swing pass to Caleb, because that's the one that went to the house. I couldn't help but notice Nebraska tried to get the same thing going. They tried to throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage, out wide, and attack our perimeter players and get away from the box, so to speak. But in general, we rallied to the ball and tackled fairly well. Incidentally, I'm going to brag a little bit on TJ. I thought TJ was more physical than he has been. He had a lot of worthwhile plays tonight. While I'm thinking of it, what happened with Deshaun? Was he replaced because of performance, or was he replaced because of a minor injury?
I have no clue. I didn't even know he left, quite frankly. Who came in relief of him? John? Nestor?
Yes.
So he's back healthy. Okay.
I'm gonna add it on one thing. It's at least good to beat Nebraska.
It's good. It's always
Absolutely.
good. Absolutely. Appreciate the call.
Good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Good. Always a good way to end the call. Don, how'd you feel like Jackson played today? I know 8 of 15 had the 72-yard swing pass to Caleb. So, I mean, you can't take that away. But if you do, he's 7 of 14 for I'll do quick math in my head. What is that, 40 yards? Right. I mean, how do you feel like he played overall today in his first start at Kinnick?
Well, I think it's safe to say he struggled a little bit. I made the comment, though, and I think it turned out I was right. Maryland made it easy for him. They played a lot of off coverage. He was 10 for 14, and they were mostly high percentage underneath cuts, as we call them, out routes, stop routes, things like that, nakeds. Incidentally, I was glad to see there was one time when he rolled out, the tight end was no more than 3 yards away from him, and he did the right thing. I just wish we always had a command to be sure the receiver knew what we were doing, and that would simply be a simple go call. Go simply means I'm not throwing it. You don't have to look back at me. I want you to locate a defender and get him blocked for me, because you're the lead blocker on this play. I don't know if there was any communication on that play, but it was obvious that our tight end realized he's going to advance the ball on the ground, and I'm going to block for him. It makes no sense to flip the ball forward to him, because he's not protected like the quarterback is. Quarterback's protected by that same guy that was maybe going to get the pass on in the flat. But if you're not comfortable throwing it, then just simply tell that guy to lead you down the field. And that run option by Shaggy, I think was worth how many yards? I think it was worth at least maybe 7, 8, 9 yards, I think.
I can't get over the fact that you're calling him Shaggy.
Well,
Go ahead, Don.
For a split second, I couldn't remember Jackson. If I can't remember Jackson, I'll call him Shaggy. I'm pretty sure I'm never going to forget Shaggy.
No, you're not going to be a Shaggy. You're a Donnie. Did people know that your actual name is Donnie? Do people know that, Don? Are you comfortable with me sharing that? Because I'm sure a lot of people on the stream believe that your full name is Donald Patterson, but it's not.
No, it's Donnie. People that call me Donnie now, in general, it means they've known me for 50 years.
I've called you Donnie a few times. If I call you on the phone, I'll say, hi, Donnie. But
well, to this day, Lisa would typically maybe affectionately refer to me as Donnie P sometimes. She does say that. I do know there were some old players years ago. They were always very respectful of me. But I am aware if they were just referring to the old coach, there were times maybe then when they referred to him, I'd say in a positive way as Donnie P. I'm aware of that. It doesn't bother me to know that. They would never say that to my face. Even now, I don't think they're comfortable calling me anything other than coach, even though I'm now soon to be 74 years old and some of them are in their 50s or 60s. They'd still very respectfully call me Coach P.
All right, Don, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse line. We've got Corey here, and Corey's got to be just seething at some of the criticism he hears from myself and Alex, and just do you appreciate balance, Corey, or are you just in these moments? Do you just, because you stick around the show even when you hear criticism from me, you don't log off? So I'm assuming you can deal with it, or at least you have you have a little stress ball in your hand that you clench when you hear me talk?
I'm as cool as ice. Now let me. I want to
talk. You don't have a voice. You're calling in without a voice, Corey.
I've been screaming all night. So
I believe you. I believe you.
I was supposed to be at this game, but I had to go to my son's rescheduled soccer game. They lost 21-1. My son was the goalkeeper. He gave up 8 goals. They pulled him, and the guy that replaced him gave up 13 goals in less time. So
he was the lesser of the bad goalies. Is that what you're saying?
They play soccer in it's basically a hockey rink that is artificial turf. It's like human pinball. It's insanity. But anyway, I want to first give a shout out and much respect to the passion of Erica, of Doug, of I'm gonna be at a loss for a couple other.
Alex
could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, as a fellow Hawkeye fan, I want us to win the championship.
Yep.
I want us to dream. I want us to dream big, and I want us to have the mindset of a Hayden Fry, of a Don Patterson. You know, those guys witnessed Iowa football fans getting excited about a first down. And they said, what would these people do if we scored a touchdown? Okay. So dream big, Hawkeye Nation. And thanks to Hayden Fry and thanks to Don Patterson for bringing that mindset to us. And let us also know that Kirk Ferentz is a disciple of Hayden Fry. Kirk Ferentz, every celebration for Kirk Ferentz is a celebration for Hayden Fry and for Don Patterson. That said, I'll say this. People have a right to feel disappointed and enraged. I don't know if that's
enraged. I think if you're enraged about football, then you have a problem. May I say that? May I say that? I'm serious. Like, if you are actually enraged by the fact that they win 8-4, I believe you have a problem. And I think seek medical help, or at least psychiatric help. I don't think in being enraged over any game it's not worth your health. And that's not balanced either. So might I say that?
Yeah, but you know, I'll say this: Kirk Ferentz is not going to let his Hawkeye football team reach the lower level that a Matt Rule coach team might. Kirk Ferentz builds a floor, and he will not let this team seek a level lower than his floor. So he establishes a standard, a minimum floor. He will scratch, claw, and fight to sustain the minimum standard. He will not let it drop below that minimum standard. That is a credit to Kirk Ferentz. Now, for those, the Ericas, the Lemanskis potentially, that criticize KF for not taking us to a higher ceiling, I'm not going to combat these people. They have legitimate arguments, but let's give KF credit for he scratches claws and fights to establish the absolute mandate that he establishes, whether it be 8-4, 7-5, whatever it might be for each specific team, he does everything he can do um, to not let the bottom fall out.
Yeah, no, I think, and I would like to think that Don and I have both given him his credit for that, his flowers. I said it earlier this year that Kirk has made it a habit. His reputation precedes him, and reputation, that goes a lot of different directions with Kirk. But as it relates to resiliency, just when you think Kirk is down and out, he figures out a way to resurrect things. I think at 2020, one of the most, I don't want to say miracle-like turnarounds, but one of the more impressive turnarounds was when in 2020, say what you want about what happened, what didn't happen leading up to the 2020 season with the racial stuff and Chris Doyle's departure. And, they lose a game on the road against Purdue in a close one, give up a ton of yards to David Bell. And then they're up 17-0 at home against Northwestern. Blow that game. They're 0-2. Oh, and by the way, leading up to game one, that group of players strategically announced a lawsuit against Kirk Ferentz, Brian Ferentz, Chris Doyle, and the university. What does Kirk do? They win 6 straight games in the middle of COVID. That was impressive, and that is a microcosm of what he's done on a number of occasions. Go to 2016. You blown out at Penn State. Who would have thought Iowa would come back and beat Michigan on a game-winning kick the very next week, and they'd storm the field. So, yeah, I mean, balance. We can, multiple things can be true at the same time. I think you and I agree more than maybe in recent history, Corey, that I have a lot of respect for Kirk Ferentz for what he's done, and I have not called for Kirk Ferentz to be fired. I don't believe that that's reasonable at this point. I do wonder if Kirk will stick around. I don't know that it's a done deal that he returns next year. I'll say that, but I'm certainly not calling him to be fired. I also don't agree, though, Corey, with people that say he's earned the right to call it quits when he wants. Does that mean he can be here for 30 more years and coach until he's 100? Of course not. Nobody's above that. Nobody's bigger than the program. And when you say, well, he's earned the right to just stay as long as he wants, then you're saying he's bigger than the program, and he's not bigger than the program. That's my issue with that statement. But other than that, I think we can agree on everything he's accomplished, and it's going to be harder next year. It's going to be tough. It's going to be hard with this new schedule and with everything they lose. So if he comes back, I'm in very much a wait and see mode as it relates to the portal, as it relates to NIL, and as it relates to how they navigate this new Big Ten.
Yes, and I would say that Kirk Ferentz's strongest trait is that he believes in his men that he's got in his program. And let's just revisit some of the men in his program that he's held faith in that had some shortcomings and then have kind of recovered. Drew Stevens. Drew struggled last year. And now
There was a little stretch of time where he struggled.
game winner. Okay. TJ Hall. TJ Hall could have been run out of town for what happened in earlier games. TJ Hall was targeted by Nebraska. TJ Hall got screwed on one PI call, and he was targeted multiple times. TJ Hall is a big reason why we won this game. And it would be absolutely remiss to not mention TJ Hall's name
Yep.
and his comeback story that occurred in this game.
Yep.
Because
And give TJ credit, right? Give TJ credit. I'm guessing, Don, you know TJ's dad. I'm guessing Terrence has been a big part of, has been in TJ's ear. I could be wrong on that. Maybe he's more of I'm going to, let the coaches do their thing. But my guess is he's helped steady him. I don't know if you've had any conversations with Terrence throughout all of this, but it's been a bit of a roller coaster for TJ here these first 3 years.
I do know this. His parents are very, very supportive. They were out at Rutgers for the game. And of course, they live on the West Coast, but they made a real commitment. And they would say, well, if we spend money to support our son and his teammates, it's okay because our son has earned a scholarship to, to Iowa. And at least they don't have those expenses. They have the expenses that are involved with supporting their son and supporting his team, and they're more than happy to spend some of their disposable money in that direction, being supportive of TJ and his Iowa teammates. So I know they were there tonight. I'm sure they were.
And by the way, like, his struggles are well documented. John Nestor struggled when he was inserted at times this year. Deshaun Lee had some struggles. But let's not forget that they're being coached by a guy who's the reigning Broyles Award winner. Now, that defense, Phil's not above reproach either. The defense has taken a step back this year, unfortunately. And I would anticipate he'll be resilient. And assuming he's back next year, the defense will be better, even though they lose a lot. I mean, I just think Phil, he will figure out a way because I think he's a great coach. And so TJ's got a lot working for him, but absolutely, that's why Kirk is, there's been so many success stories at these individual positions because he's surrounded himself with great people and the culture is strong at the top.
But I think that it started with Hayden Fry and this coaching tree and this belief in people and this true investment in this program. It started with Hayden Fry. It's continued with Kirk Ferentz. And we have Drew Stevens, who had shortcomings last year. He has answered the call. You have TJ Hall, shortcomings. Kirk Ferentz believed in him. He's answered the call. Okay. You have, I'm sorry, I've got to get this in because this struck me as meaningful. Corey Bratta kind of gave out a little bit of a flex on Twitter about his belief in Drew Stevens, that maybe we should have taken that 56-yard field goal attempt. And I love the passion for the little things that Iowa football entails. The fact that 56-yard field goal, that fraction of the fan base that acknowledges that, hey, we can make that. The little things, as Jack Campbell.
Don endorsed that as well. The 56-yard field goal that could have come back to bite him. The fact that they punted, and that was a decision. I'm not saying it was an easy one because 56 yards for most kickers is a very difficult kick, but now, I don't think it is for Drew.
Was that into the wind or was it with the wind?
It was with the wind.
Oh, so to your credit, Corey.
But even if it was into the wind, I think he would have made it.
I mean, Drew, Corey, I appreciate your Drew Stevens flexes.
Yep.
I mean, that guy's, I really think he's draftable. He's NFL material.
Yeah. No, he is.
But I just want to mention some names. Okay. This game was not won if it wasn't for Caleb Johnson. And I want to say his name. I also want to say Max Llewellyn's name. It's obvious, but let's say his name. If he doesn't reach in and get that strip sack fumble, we don't win. Okay, that's special. But let's not forget the multiple sacks of Ethan Herkett.
Yep.
That guy is.
And Herkett was excellent as well. He's been excellent all year. He's been
The
their
guy.
best DE.
The guy is special. He is special. But the future is bright. I think of Aiden Hutchinson for the Detroit Lions. And every time I watch Max Llewellyn,
You think
Max,
Aiden Hutchinson, don't you?
he is Aiden Hutchinson 2.0.
Okay.
So
there you go, Don. He's going to be a first round draft. Wasn't Aiden Hutchinson drafted in the top 5 overall? So is that what's going to happen with Max Llewellyn next year? He's going to be a first round draft pick.
no, my prediction as a safe bet is second round, but his spin move is equal to Aiden Hutchinson's spin move. Okay.
He's got a darn good spin move. I'll give you that. Absolutely.
So, but let me just say this.
I got to move on after this, Corey, but go ahead.
Yes. On Facebook, on Twitter, there was a lot of people that quit on this team at halftime. And I told these people that quit that I will call you out and I will remind you when we win a game-winning field goal, I will rub it in your face because Kirk Ferentz believes in his men. And Kirk Ferentz is a disciple of Hayden Fry. And Kirk Ferentz, when Kirk Ferentz is 90 years old, these men will help him move a hutch out of his dining room into the storage facility because they love that man, because he's a good man, because he's like Hayden Fry, because he's like Norm Parker, because he's like Kirk Ferentz, because he's like Phil Parker. These are all good men. This is Iowa football.
I'm going to lose it if we keep going. Corey,
No.
I love you. No.
Iowa is the makeup of Iowa is good people. And let me tell you something. We need to celebrate our good people. And my hat goes off to Don Patterson, to Corey Bratta, to Erica, to Lemansky, to Doug. Okay, we have great people. We're passionate people, and we speak strongly about how we feel. Let us not discount that we all care. We care greatly. And Iowa is a special state. I'm stuck here in Michigan. I want to be in Iowa, and I can't be. But Iowa people,
why can't you do it? Does Kirk have a restraining order on you, Corey?
listen, I have season tickets. My son's last game was today. Okay, I had to stay here to be at my son's last soccer game. But Iowa stands for goodness, trust, and belief in our people. So don't give up the faith. Iowa is the last hope for the wherewithal, the belief, the staunch stance of strength to not give up, to not quit on our people. Come on, Hawkeye Nation. Don't buy in to the trash of the other 51 states. Iowa is the greatest state. Stay loyal, stay strong, believe in KF, believe in Don Patterson, believe in Hayden Fry, and believe in the Iowa Hawkeyes. I'm a Cyclone graduate, and I subscribe to the Swarm.
Yep.
I am a season ticket holder. Okay, and my wife is sending me a nasty gram right now. But listen,
I
listen,
wonder why.
KF is a good man.
Yep.
Hayden Fry is a good man. Hayden Fry and KF are the same. Okay, let's celebrate greatness. Let's be grateful.
Celebrate it and get
In
some
the spirit of Thanksgiving,
Corey.
I love you, Corey. I love
Thank
you,
you.
Don. And go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Thank you, Corey. We love you
Way
too.
to- That's the way to end it. And just so because I have people asking me in the chat, why did you let that go on so long? It's 1:00 in the morning. That's why I let that go on so long. So it's 1:00 in the morning. All right. Erica, thank you for the super chat. She says, need a Hayden Fry stream in postseason, including stories from his tenure, maybe perspectives from Hayden's players, if possible. That would be a fun show, Don. That would take some coordination, but maybe we can work on something in the off season to get a bunch of Hayden Fry's, some of Hayden's former players. We could probably do that. Could you imagine having a 8-person stream with a bunch of former players chatting it up? I don't think I should be on that stream if that
I
happens.
think it would be a lot of fun, and I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing it.
That would be great. Yeah, we'll have to work on it. It's a great idea. Lemansky, appreciate the super chat. Coach Donnie would love a story during bowl coverage regarding one of your footballs in your home. Okay, back on the wall, Don. So let's write that down. Football on wall.
I'm not sure I have a favorite ball back there. Most of them relate to different bowl games.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have to. I'm writing these things down as we go. So Hayden Fry. Sure.
Let me share one thing with you, Corey. Talking about analyzing Nebraska. As you know, one of the things I do, I went back and looked at the 5 teams that had beaten Nebraska, and you have an idea of who they are. Illinois way back in September, 31-24 in overtime. That was in Lincoln. And then, of course, the one that shocked the Nebraska fans, Indiana 56, Nebraska 7. And then they bounce back maybe the next week, I can't recall. They go to Columbus and play the heck out of Ohio State, 21-17. And then they struggle against UCLA, 27-20. And that was in Lincoln. UCLA went into Lincoln and beat them. And then they go to the West Coast and lose 28-20 to Southern Cal. But in those games, those 5 games, the team that beat Nebraska won these parameters every time. There were 3 different parameters that were won by those 5 teams, 5 for 5. And obviously that's a pretty good blueprint for how to beat Nebraska. I'll share with you what they are. We fell miserably on one of the 3, I will admit. 1, total offense. Well, we clearly didn't get that down. We had half as many yards as they did. But the other 2 you'll find interesting because you wouldn't expect to hear from one of them for sure. Edge on defensive sacks, 5 for 5 with those 5 teams that beat them. And tonight we won that easily, 4-1. And let's face it, one of the biggest plays in the game was the sack that happened to also become a fumble. Hats off to Llewellyn for that. I'm sorry, was it Llewellyn or was it? Yeah, it was Llewellyn, wasn't it?
Yeah, the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
But anyway, defensive sacks. And how about this for a stat that was consistent? Fewer passing attempts. Well, clearly we had fewer passing attempts tonight than Nebraska. So those 3 parameters that were related to all 5 of the Nebraska losses, we achieved 2 out of 3, and we beat them all over again. we didn't achieve on total offense. I think in some cases the team that beat them was barely ahead of them in terms of total offense. But I do remember making the comment to Kirk. I don't think it's critical that we outgain them. I do think it's critical that we went on sacks and that we ended up throwing fewer passes. We got both those done easily, and that contributed to us being able to pull it off. So, I think Corey is basically fundamentally right. Those players believe in our coaches. They believe in Coach Ferris. They don't want to disappoint them. I've always told a lot of young coaches have asked me this, Corey, through the years, give me some advice on how to become a great head coach. I said, well, don't forget this. You're not going to have any success as a head coach unless you have two things in your favor. And this is relating to the players that you have on your team. To be successful as a head coach or as a position coach, you need to have two things that you've earned in terms of relationships. By your players, you have to be loved and respected. And 1 out of 2 is not good enough. I've known coaches that were loved but not respected but not loved. 1 out of 2 is a recipe for failure. You got to have both. They have to love you, and they love you because you demonstrate that you love them. It's a two-way street. I saw Paul Burmeister tonight before he went on the air, and Paul, right there in front of his sidekick, his analyst. God, I draw a blank on his name. Help me out, Corey. The old
I don't
Texas,
know who the analyst was.
It was a Texas quarterback that played in the NFL.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
I'll think of it here in a minute. Anyway, without even hesitating, Paul said, Coach, it's great to see you, and I love you. And it was easy for me to say, Paul, I love you too. That's the relationship that a coach hopes to have with all of his players. I certainly have that with most of mine, and I'm very grateful for that relationship. And it's earned. It's not given to you. It's earned by the way you treat them. And they don't expect you to be their buddy. I refer to it as tough love. It's the same way that you should parent your own child. Tough love. You remind them by your actions that you love them, and yet you're the disciplinary action if you need to be. You react, but you don't overreact. And that's what Kirk Ferris does. He reacts, but he doesn't overreact. That's what Hayden Fry did. Hayden had a degree in psychology. He knew what buttons to push. I learned so much from Hayden Fry and Bill Snyder. You've heard me say that before, and it's true. Both of them are Hall of Fame coaches. It isn't any wonder I might have learned a lot from them because I was around them for a long time. Great coaches, and I'm blessed to have known them so well. I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, Don. I was
And
just.
Lemansky hit it on the head. Colt McCoy.
Oh, was it Colt? I was going to say Colt, but I didn't even realize that was Colt. I wasn't. See, I'm not really paying attention that. I mean, I knew it was Paul, right? I knew it was Paul, but I remember during the game thinking, I don't know who that other voice is. So I didn't even know that was Colt McCoy. So very interesting. Good for Colt. His NFL career didn't pan out necessarily the way you would have liked. Here's what I thought was interesting is that you had, do you know what other former NFL quarterback was doing the sideline reports?
No.
I'll give you a hint. He played for the Patriots. He played for the Chiefs.
Patriots and Chiefs. Wow.
Yeah.
In recent years? I mean, I'm sure he's not that old, right?
Last 15 years, yeah.
Where did he play college?
Where did he play? I don't know. Let me find out. Let's see. Where did he play in college? Don't look in the chat because I'm sure somebody will spoil it because that's how people are. Let's see. He played in college for USC. Mark Rogers would be ashamed of me for not knowing that.
SC. I still give up.
Matt Castle.
Okay.
I thought that was interesting seeing him on the sidelines. I just thought that was strange, but anyway.
Well, he earned his money tonight. I've only done one game on the sidelines. A few years ago, it was a Missouri Valley game at Missouri State. And you say, well, what's the problem with that? Well, the only problem, it was game one of their conference season. So it was sometime in September, and it was brutally hot on that sideline. And Bobby Petrino, incidentally, was the coach at Missouri State at the time. course, he come from Arkansas. And I thought, well, this is going to be a challenge. I got to interview Bobby Petrino right before he leaves the field at halftime. And I don't even know if he's going to be very cooperative. So I hope so. And thankfully he was. He was very cooperative, very respectful. But I do remember that can be brutal duty because of the weather. I lost a few pounds that day on the sideline in the hot sun. And tonight it wasn't a problem for Matt Castle to lose weight. It was just a problem to stay warm, I'm sure.
Absolutely. All right, folks, we do have the box score, and we have a couple people who have been waiting on hold. So we're going to get to Jackson and Erica here coming up next. Coil Stipulate, appreciate the super chat. If you remember, Corey, there was a guy for the Iowa State game that said Iowa was basically guaranteed to lose both the state game and this one based on history. Put $5 on Iowa at half, 140 easy. So Coil Stipulate, you must have tuned in late because that was Jack. And Jack called in earlier and said that trend is now up. So, yes, we did remember that. Appreciate the super chat, Coil Stipulate. But, yeah, he did call in here a little bit ago. And Lemansky says donation for a GoFundMe page to get Corey out of Michigan. That's the other Corey. How about Circle Hark? He says, Coach, is it true that when the boogeyman goes to sleep, he checks his closet for Coach Hayden Fry? Thanks and go on.
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Coach Fry wasn't that scary, was he?
No.
Wasn't what's his face? Who was the coach that was known to be kind of a scary guy that everybody was afraid of before Coach Fry? Who am I thinking of? Evashevsky, right?
Oh, yeah, Evashevsky was
he was known to be kind of a scary guy.
Well, a lot of people say he had a little bit of a mean streak, maybe.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Michelle says, what do you think about the end of the game when Nebraska's coach wanted a delay of game because Drew Stevens kicked that field goal after the timeout was called? After he's trying to ice him, and he takes the warm-up kick, and Matt Rule did not like that. He was in the official's ear about that.
Guys take that warm-up kick all the time. I'm assuming he called timeout at the very last second, right?
Yeah, I mean, they snapped it and Drew took it. But, I mean, Rule was just begging for a call there. Just begging for a call, Don.
I don't think I've ever seen a delay of game assigned to the kicking team for that.
Yeah.
Ever, have you?
No, not that I can recall. Mark says, Don, will you adopt me as your grandson? Hey, consider it a compliment, Don.
Well, unless you have a police record, Mark, I'd certainly consider it.
All right. 40, I called in earlier. Sorry for thinking the kick doinked. It looked like it did from my angle in the stadium. The view on TV wasn't great. Appreciate you guys letting me come on. Absolutely, 40. Appreciate you being here, sir. Enjoyed your phone call. Amanda says that wasn't reasonable either, and I think she's referring to when I said, are we going to let Kirk coach till he's 100? Well, yeah, obviously. I'm using an extreme example, but that was my whole point, Amanda, was bringing up the fact that you can't just broadly say he'll go when he wants to go because, hey, I think most people would say Joe Pa probably overstayed his welcome in State College. Now, there was other stuff going on that obviously, Bobby Bowden is another example. Did Bobby Bowden overstay his welcome? Did Mac Brown, a good friend of yours, overstay his welcome? Because the decision makers in Chapel Hill certainly believe he did.
Well, my disappointment, and I haven't talked to Mac, but I was disappointed. To me, with the job that Mac Brown has done for North Carolina, I certainly thought, if you want to make a coaching change, that's fine. But I would like to believe, Corey, that Mac did have the option of declaring that he was retiring.
I would have expected that, but if he said no, then
yeah, he might have simply said thanks, but no thanks. If you're going to replace me, you got to fire me. And they said, okay, you're fired.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but I was surprised when I saw the announcement too, because I thought if anything, he's going to leave. They're going to say, look, we love you, but it's time. And,
often it happens that way. I don't know exactly what happened with Coach Fry, but I'm pretty sure of this. Coach Fry knew in 1999. Of course, he had health issues and he wasn't young anymore. He knew now's the right time.
Yeah.
And he was able to state, I've decided that this is the time for me to be done. And I appreciate Bob and other athletic directors for, it wasn't Bob at the time, I guess it was Bob Mosby, wasn't it? Bob Mosby gave Hayden the privilege of declaring, I've decided now is the time for me to retire. That's what Hayden deserved.
I want to share the video of the pregame handshake or lack thereof, courtesy of Curtis Feeder of KGAN. Here is the video on Curtis Feeder's X feed. You can clearly see Quinn Schulte, hand extended. Now, we don't know what was said earlier. Could there have been something said earlier? Was this, related to, I mean, obviously these Iowa players have their hands extended. I don't know if Nebraska. Again, we don't know what was said earlier, Don, right? There's two sides to everything.
Corey, tell me the last time you saw this happen for a coin toss.
I don't remember the last time.
I don't know that I've ever seen it.
Well, but is it fair to, am I right in saying we don't know what was said or done leading up to this? Is that fair?
Yeah, we don't know what came about during pregame, let's say.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's my only point. I'm not defending Nebraska because it looks like poor sportsmanship without question. But we don't know that they just walked up there and did that. But I'd be curious. I obviously would like to ask the players and like to ask Matt Rule what happened. They probably won't find out. I mean, they may have their own story, and they may be two sides that are, both untrue. Both have truths and whatnot. So
I would just make this observation, Corey. I don't think it happened by accident, because otherwise one of them would have stuck his hand out not knowing that the plan was to not shake hands. It appears to me they, as captains, at least they discussed what to do.
Right. Yeah. The only reason I pause is I see the Iowa players' hands extended before they even get there. Almost I don't want to say it's superficial, because I'm not implying that. I don't know that, but I'm just like, you almost wonder if something happened before that to where they're making a point of having their hands. I don't know. I'm kind of trying to look for the good in in the other side of this, because I'm trying not to assume that it's just horrible sportsmanship, but maybe it was just horrible sportsmanship. It looks like
an entry here, Corey, that says Husker fans are claiming it's because they weren't allowed on the Tiger Hawk in pregame. I've never heard about that.
Okay. Yeah, I did see there was video or footage, I should say, from the press box of Iowa people basically guarding the Tiger Hawk. So that's all I'm saying is there's probably a backstory to it, not defending it at all or justifying it, but there was probably a backstory. But it's just a bad look, regardless. And it's not a bad look for Iowa, right? There's nothing that I've seen that. Who cares if they're guarding the Tiger Hawk? What's the big deal? Now watch, Don. I'm going to get ripped for defending Nebraska. You watch. I'm going to get ripped for defending them. I'm not defending Nebraska. I'm just, anyways. I always think about that. I'm always like, well, what happened before that? Something's not on tape. I'm like, well, what led to that? That's just the way where my mind goes. So anyways, this is not true. So the Nomad Geofencer says, they're big. We are small on the O-line. That's simple. All of Iowa's linemen are 300 pounds plus, Don. Nick DeYoung might be 295, and he's out, right? And Jennings Dunker's out right now. But Don, was the difference tonight because Nebraska's offensive and defensive linemen weighed more than Iowa's linemen?
No.
Or bigger and stronger than Iowa's linemen? Was that the main difference here?
Well, it gets into pad level. It gets into mental toughness, and there's an athletic component. Who's the better athlete? Who can adjust in terms of maintaining contact with the opponent, that type of thing. Who can separate? They're trying to separate from our blockers, which requires a lot of strength and athleticism. It's complicated, but it all starts with just strength and toughness. Those two components in particular.
All right, real quick, just so people can see. Here, let me go ahead and share this because I know this is courtesy of Mitch Fick of Fox 17. Mitch Fick of Fox 17. Let me pull up the video. This is at the very end of tonight's game. And Jay Higgins ensuring that he got a handshake from Matt Rule. Here's the video.
Hey, where's the head coach at? Zoom in on their head coach, not shaking our hands.
Okay, so I don't know. I'm guessing you couldn't hear the audio on that, Don.
I could.
Oh, you could hear the audio. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So there you go. Again, so we didn't see pregame, right? We didn't see what occurred pregame, but obviously there were things that probably should not have occurred on the Nebraska side, right? Regardless of the reason, not shaking hands prior to the game. That's just petty, I think. Matt Rule walking through Iowa's pregame warm-up, also petty if that occurred. So I don't know. I don't know if that's the because I have, I know you have a lot of respect for Matt Rule based on what you know about Coach Rule, correct?
That's why I'm anxious to pull up the press conference to see what was said, because some people have commented that they lost respect for him based on what he said after the game.
All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse line. We got Jackson, who's with us. Jackson, welcome.
How y'all doing tonight, gentlemen?
We are doing good. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. Happy Thanksgiving and happy Black Friday. I wanted to make my apologies for not calling in all season. Coach, I know the last time we saw one another was New Year's Day of 2024, talking a little bit about Iowa, Tennessee for a little bit.
Okay.
But congrats on the victory. And I want to ask something real quick for you two. Where would you grade the 2024 season?
Where would we grade it? Like rank it, or like
a A through F?
Well, it's not complete until the bowl game, but
okay.
Based on regular season, it's a good question. I'd probably give it like a C minus, maybe. I'm in between. I know certain people get real mad if I said D plus, but I think I real close to a D plus, Jackson. Okay. D plus, C minus. Don?
I'd say based on our high expectations, I'd go with a C.
Okay. Yeah, that's about what I would have expected.
Well, and bright side is Iowa is now 9-1 versus Nebraska since Nebraska fired Bo Pelini for declaring that beating Iowa is not good enough to keep your job.
Yep. I remember that game, and the game feels like 10 years ago because, it was 10 years ago.
I've gotten so used to this game being a Black Friday tradition. That's why I'm just like, I've got no complaints here. This is Black Friday right there, man.
Ironically enough, this game almost went to overtime, and that game went to overtime. I remember, Don, I was in the press box for that game, and I actually left the press box at the very end, and went down closer to the field, and was toward the field when you probably don't remember this because you were coaching in 2014. What am I thinking? But Brandon Scherf, big Brandon Scherf, who's proven to be an NFL. I think he's been an All-Pro in the NFL. He nearly took a lateral on a kickoff return at the end of regulation back for a touchdown. Had he done that, that loss wouldn't have occurred, and perhaps things would have went differently with Nebraska, although that would have been more reason for them to fire Pelini. But, yeah, it's been a one-sided series, Jackson. Most of the games have been close, with the exception being like 2016, 2017. There may be another one in there that was I can't remember what 14 looked like, but almost all the games have been close.
It was overtime on ABC. Nebraska won.
I'm sorry, 14 was the ABC game. 15 was, I think every game in the series since then has been close, with the exception being 2016, 2017.
Yeah, and 2022 has been the only time, but I feel like this series is going to get to be a 50-50 series as long as Nebraska can keep Matt Rule happy.
Well, Matt Rule's going to have, 6-6 is probably going to at least buy him some time, but the clock ticks a lot faster on people now, and it's going to tick a lot faster on Matt Rule than it did for Scott Frost.
Yeah, a lot of teams throw the baby out with the bathwater real quick in this age.
Yeah, Matt Rule is not the promised son. So if they go out next year and go 5-7, Don, he may be done.
They won't.
What's their schedule, Jackson? Do you know?
Well, they got a pretty easy one compared to last season. They don't have to worry about the Buckeyes, as far as I recall. They got USC coming to their backyard. And I know that they got Cincinnati, but let's be real, Cincinnati's pitiful. And they're going to be that way as long as they got Satterfield. They do have to go to Penn State, but which Penn State are we going to get? So,
no, they'll lose their game.
Oh, yeah. Michigan's coming to their backyard. I mean, the home slate, their toughest games are at home. Toughest road games are Minnesota and Penn State. I mean, seriously, who's getting intimidated by Maryland? I mean, you're getting
based on that schedule, I could see them going 8-4, but it wouldn't take a whole lot for me to squint and see 6-6. So I don't know if they go 6-6 this year and 6-6 next year. Don, does Matt Rule return for year 4?
Well,
climate.
I would think he needs to win more than 6. That's for sure.
Yeah,
and then you continue to show upward progress. Incidentally, from what I know, I thought this was interesting. As I understand it, right now, we don't honestly know. We know who the opponents are in conference next fall. We have no idea as to when those games are played yet.
Correct.
It seems odd to me because you've already declared who plays who, and somehow you got to fit it all into a schedule so that it seems to be somewhat fair for everyone. That sounds like a headache to try to figure that out, but somebody's got to do it.
Well, they'll announce the date sometime around December, if I had to take a guess, and then they're going to announce who's going to be on Black Friday, the last Friday before Memorial Day, of course, in the month of May, and then we'll be seeing who's going to be at the media days around March.
I do think it's kind of neat that at least a short-term tradition is Iowa, Nebraska on Black Friday. I'd like for that to continue. I think that's just like you saw Mississippi State today, which I think is a long-standing tradition also.
Yes.
That's right,
Don?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, before I go, tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Hawkeyes about the magic that Corey Bradda produces on From the Hawkeye of the Storm, and the magic that he produces with Coach Donnie Patterson for the Iowa football postgame show, Coach Gary Close for the men's basketball postgame show, and Coach Kashin Alexander for the women's basketball postgame show. And don't forget to tell the employees and the cashiers at Hawkeyes about the magic that Corey Bradda produces every Tuesday afternoon on Hawkeyes Live, every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. on Iowa at the Voice College Football. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss it. Now let's get this man Corey to 10,000 subscribers From the Hawkeye of the Storm this Christmas season.
Jackson, love the passion, sir. Thank you for being our promoter.
Oh, you're welcome, man. I'm always happy to tell everybody about the magic you're producing, man. And it's the least I could do for having you on Jack Sewing in June, man.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Keep on fighting the good fight, my good sir.
I plan to. You stay safe and stay warm. You're in colder weather than I am. Get a
All right.
lot of lawn sleeves and a lot of blankets around you, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Have a great night, Jackson. Appreciate the call. And yeah, if people could follow in Jackson's recommendations, if you could subscribe, that would be of great help. We're less than 300 subs away from 10,000, so that'd be a great mark to hit. Maybe we could do that by the bowl game, Don. Could we hit 10,000 by the start of the season? Well, that was a little over eager, but maybe we could hit 10,000 by the end of the season. Wouldn't that be good? We might need a little bit of hyper speed there, but if people could do that, that would be great. We've got a lot of women's basketball coming. That seems to bring in some good traffic. So anyways, let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. But before we do that, I'm going to take another moment to thank our sponsor, RTI Threads. Check out the apparel of guys like Aaron Graves, Jacob Gill, Carson Shire, Zach Lutmer, Owen Freeman, Peyton Sandfort, Josh Dix, and many more. Support Iowa athletes and their NIL initiatives. Visit rtithreads.com/NIL. And as you support RTI, you're supporting this show from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Let's go to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got Erica. Erica,
Hi.
welcome.
Hello.
Hey.
Let me just say first, Jackson brings the energy. I don't know how he does it at this time of night. Pretty amazing. Good job, Jackson.
Appreciate that, Jackson.
That was super. So listen, I just wanted to point out something that I think some people are forgetting, and that is that there's nuance in life. Meaning, you can respect Kirk Ferentz and still acknowledge that there are issues and be critical. And I don't know why people continually forget that. I'm just trying to understand it.
Well, because but haven't we talked about this before? People in general, Erica, are not balanced in life. I mean, they're not balanced and reasonable with anything in life. Anything.
Yeah.
From driving their vehicles to how they treat each other. That's just they're not balanced with anything. So that's what this is, just a reflection of that.
Yeah, in the age of social media, that's what it is, right?
And social media only heightens that and exposes that. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just amazing to me that people keep forgetting that. I mean, honestly, like Kirk has brought a lot to the program. He's consistently kept us, decent amount of wins, but I think it's time to go to the next level. And I do not think Kirk is the one to do that. I've already made that clear in the past. I'm not going to go into that whole spiel again because, frankly, I'm too tired at this point. It's too late for me to do that. But that being said, we know that Beth's not going to fire him, so we need to be realistic. And, I think he's going to leave next year or the year after on his own terms anyway. So, let's just hope that once Tim Lester has more of his guys on the team so he can run his offense the way he wants to, maybe we're a bit more successful. Another comment I wanted to make, Matt Rule, I have to say, I really respected him before. I've heard him talk before about other teams, and I've come across some of his press conferences, things like that. And just the way that he carried himself tonight, and the way that his players carried themselves as well, I can't respect that. I think it's really low. I understand they wanted to win the game and that it's a rivalry, but excuse me, but that's one of the things actually that I would compliment Kirk on, because he doesn't play those games. I feel like I've lost a lot of respect for Matt Rule tonight. And that's a little disappointing. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I before I form an opinion, I'd like to have the full story, but I don't know that Coach Rule will be asked about that. Maybe they will ask him, but I doubt it. So that's unfortunate. The whole situation's unfortunate. I would like to get more perspective on it, because everything I've been told about Matt Rule has been positive. I've been impressed with Matt Rule when he talks. Don, what can you share about Matt, Coach Rule? I know you've talked about him in the past.
I first knew him when he was at Temple, I think I was at Buffalo at the time, or maybe at UConn. I can't remember, but I was impressed with him then, and got to know him better when he was at Baylor, primarily because most of my family graduated from Baylor, and I have a cousin that's a significant contributor to athletics at Baylor, and of course he knows Matt very well, and he's aware that Randy and I are cousins, so I know him indirectly. I haven't talked to him in several years. I certainly didn't look him up after the game tonight, but I know nothing but good things about him. And you've heard me say any number of times, Corey, I think Matt Rule was a good hire for Nebraska. I think he'll do a great job for him. Some Nebraska fans might argue that at this point, but I think they just need to give him a little more time because I think they're going to continue to track in the right direction. I fully expect they'll be harder to beat next year than they are this year.
Yeah. Caller Corey says in the chat that everyone loves the new shiny objects. I'll take the tried and true tested ones. Well, just because Kirk leaves doesn't mean that we don't get someone who's tried and true. I think the job at Iowa would appeal to a lot of coaches. Everyone thinks that no good coach is going to come here or something, it seems like, and I don't think that's true. I think we've proven that if you do, well enough, I guess is the way to say it, you'll keep your job. And I don't see that changing no matter if Kirk is here or not. So I think it's a lot more appealing of a job than people give it credit for. I mean, I understand like our reputation has perhaps suffered a bit because of everything that's happened in the past few years and stuff like that. But, the right money talks these days, especially. And if Iowa offers enough money to the right person, they'll take the job. I don't know why people seem to think we can't get a good coach here and that Kirk's the end, be all end all. That's just simply not true.
I do think it's a better job than people give it credit for, Erica, and I think Iowa State is a good example of that. I know Iowa State hasn't gone out and won national championships. They're playing in the Big 12 now, but they've had some good success under Matt Campbell, Don. And I know they struggled under Coach Rhodes. Coach McCarney obviously got them to a place they hadn't been, but Matt's come in and done a really nice job, and they bring in good recruits, very much on par with Iowa. They've kind of went back and forth here recent classes. Iowa dominates a class in the state, then Iowa State wins one, and back and forth a little bit. But they find a way to bring in some pretty good skill guys at running back, at receiver. They've had some good quarterbacks. They got Rocco Becht in. They got a guy who's one of the better quarterbacks in the league right now, and Brock Purdy. I mean, give them credit where credit's due. They found a way, and they're from Podunk Ames, Iowa. So I don't know. I just I think that's fair. I think there's some disadvantages to trying to recruit to the state of Iowa, but
you know what
but that doesn't mean that you again balance.
Yeah, I don't buy into that rhetoric 100%. I mean, look, like Hayden Fry, I know that I can't remember which coach it was, but I know that I've overheard somewhere, I think it was Michigan State's coach maybe back in the day, told Hayden Fry that they respect him a lot because he had to recruit nationally versus regionally. Maybe it was Penn State's coach. I don't remember. I heard it on some documentary I watched about him on YouTube at some point. But if Hayden Fry could do it, I'm sure that we could do it. And we are starting to do it. If you look, like we're getting people from Florida, we're getting people from California. I think we've had some Texans on the team recently. So we're not just recruiting in Iowa anymore. And actually, I was looking at recruiting classes and stuff like that on one of the sites, who covers the Hawkeyes, and I noticed we're not getting we're not getting all the state recruits that we usually do from Iowa. And I think part of the reason we aren't is because we are trying to recruit more nationally now. So I don't really buy the rhetoric, especially in the state where you can buy players.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with Florida, especially. I mean, they've had some success out in Cali, but the Florida connections, you got to give Liddell Betts a lot of credit for that. But it's all about who you hire, right, Don? I mean, if you can get somebody and build a staff, and that's why it's not just who you're hiring at the top, but it's who they hire to assist. It can work. I mean, ask and then look at a situation like Kurt Signetti at Indiana. Who would have expected that turnaround in year one? Now that's
Well,
that's a
look at
bit
what Lincoln Riley did year one at USC, and look what he's doing now. 1 year isn't sustained success.
no, but I mean the fact that Coach Signetti has figured out a way to make that team a contender for the playoff in 1 year proves that with the portal you can also build it a different way, right? Coach Hoiberg proved that on the basketball side for Iowa State before the portal became a thing. And now there's a lot of football programs that are doing that, and new head coaches that have to dive deep into the portal to either cushion or I should say supplement a roster that's been depleted somewhat because of portal entries, or completely build from scratch with the portal. And I know that's not necessarily ideal, especially to someone like Kirk Ferentz, but whoever comes in next is probably going to have to really utilize the portal. And the fans are going to be, I mean, the fact that Kinnick is sold out each and every day, that's a big positive, right, for recruitment. It's more than you could have said about Indiana prior to Signetti being hired. So there's things that are going for Iowa. The stability of the last 40 years with Iowa's head coaches, those are all positives. So,
I mean, I don't think there's any other team in the country who has had only 2 coaches for that long. I think we're unique in that.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. That's a fact.
So depending on how you see it, that's definitely a positive. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Yeah. And Lemansky did confirm that it was Penn State who admired Hayden Fry's recruiting. So I couldn't remember if it was Michigan State or Penn State, but anyway. Another thing I wanted to comment on, it's really important that Iowa makes a good decision whenever it is we have to hire a new coach, or a new head coach, I should say, because, man, look at what is happening in Wisconsin. I watched the game earlier today. I don't know if you guys did, against Minnesota. Man, Minnesota looked like a playoff team against them. That was crazy.
Yeah, it's you almost wonder if they picked the wrong guy, if Coach Leonard would have been the better fit, Don. It's almost like Luke Fickell's trying to fit a square peg through a round hole, in a sense.
It seems like they made the mistake of not embracing their culture.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's going to be... I'm sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, following in the footsteps of Barry Alvarez and Brett Bielema. And Paul Christ.
Right.
All 3.
And that's one thing. If Iowa, you're not going to come in here and hire, the Air Force head coach to coach Iowa. I mean, that's not what's, obviously. So there's going to be some. I think Wisconsin's a great kind of like an object lesson, right? You can
maybe an example of what not to do. Huh?
Yeah, let's not do that. Let's not do that. We understand there are risks. Let's look at Nebraska. Let's not make the mistake that Wisconsin made, and let's go hire the best person. And how can we replicate what Indiana did? And there's not a perfect formula, but there are examples on both sides.
I wonder, I don't know a lot about Luke Fickell, but I'm just wondering, what did he run at Cincinnati, or what did they run at Cincinnati as far as offense goes? Was it air raid?
Not to the extent maybe that North Carolina had, and that's where they got their offensive coordinator from. Yeah, Phil Longo was with Mike Brown, and he had a reputation for being an expert in the passing game.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like, was it wrong to hire Phil Longo, or was it wrong to hire Fickell?
Well, I thought Fickell was a good hire at the time, but I have to admit, I was a little bit skeptical that Wisconsin could become a team that was equally capable as a passing team as they are a running team.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know enough about Wisconsin to comment, much more than the eye test, and they failed that miserably today. I can't believe. I know they're our rival. We're supposed to have hate speech against them, but man, they have fallen. It's really something else.
Yeah, it's safe to say the analytics were really, really heavily in favor of Minnesota, not Wisconsin.
if you make Minnesota look like a playoff team, there's problems with your team. I'm sorry to say.
I found myself thinking I'm glad we're not playing Minnesota in game 12 because right now they look like they're playing pretty well.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true.
And they played Penn State tough just a week ago, right?
So before I go, Coach, do you have any? You know, what I'm gonna ask. You already know. Do you have any Hayden Fry stories having to do with Nebraska?
It seems like having to do with Nebraska. Oh, well, I knew this. You know, we went over that. We gave Mascara in year 1, as I recall. And then we went over to Lincoln in year 2, and they beat us like we stole something. Very one-sided game. And then in year 3, 1981, as you know, back in Kinnick, we beat them. And that was a very decorated team, a highly ranked team. We beat them 10-7. It was a game a little bit like tonight's game. It wasn't pretty by any means.
Yeah.
But we got the job done primarily with outstanding defense and a kicking game. There was a punter named Reggie Roby that was pretty good. Erica, you don't know much about Reggie Roby, but let me tell you, he can hit a ball as well as anyone you'll ever see.
Yeah, I think we need to start being called maybe Kicker U because, man, you know, we just have such a tradition now of kickers who are just amazing. And yeah.
Kickers, punters, all of the above. And
Let's
frankly,
not forget about our return specialist.
let's say return specialist too. You go from Cooper to Jean to a finalist for the national award, whatever that's called. For Caden Weed.
I can't remember what that one is called.
The Jet Award, I think.
Speaking of awards, one more thing before I go. Actually, this was something I wanted to ask. How do you guys feel about Jay Higgins not getting his due at the Butkus?
Yeah, I don't know what they look at. I don't know what stat. I mean, he's I know the one stat that I saw today, he's second in the Big Ten in tackles. You know, this is an Iowa team that's not in contention, even though it's supposed to be an individual award. You just have to assume those writers, whoever's voting on that, I don't even know who votes for those awards, but that they're biased toward teams that are having more success. If Iowa was sitting at 10-2,
I read on Twitter, and again, I know it's Twitter, it's social media. I didn't fact check it because I just didn't think to. Apparently, the ones who are up are on teams that are similar to us who have losses. So that argument doesn't hold up, really. I mean, like I said, I didn't fact check it. Maybe it was incorrect, but
well, it's honestly, it might be the best thing that happens to Jay because it'll only give him more motivation, and then he'll probably be a star in the NFL. You know, he's
going to be a star. I don't think he'll go first round. I would love to see it, but you know what? To be honest, I didn't think Jack Campbell would go first round either.
He's not going to go first round. I don't think he's big enough to go first round. But that doesn't really matter. I mean, look at George Kittle. You go down the list. There's plenty of good. Brock Purdy's a great example.
And that's another, to kind of go full circle, that's another reason why people might want to come to Iowa, because we prepare well for the NFL, and it's a known thing.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's a pipeline here.
Yeah,
whether it's directly through Kirk or not, there's a pipeline.
Right, exactly. And that'll probably continue most likely. So, all right, guys, it's late. And it's, as Jackson would say, it's cold out there.
It's cold out there.
Or cold outside. I'm sorry. Cold outside. I think that's what he says.
Outside. Okay.
16 degrees here in Chicagoland. So,
well, yeah. Get some rest, Erica. We'll try to do the same. We appreciate you chatting as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Have a good evening. And
thanks, Erica. Go Hawks. Absolutely. All right, let's go to our last Iowa Smokehouse caller of the day. Before we do that, David, old prediction. It sounds like they're going to Tampa, the old Outback Bowl, right, Don? Whatever it's called now. Do we even know what it's called now?
I don't. All I know is I believe Tom's gave the number 90%. We're 90% likely to be in Tampa.
And Ole Miss, are they projected? No, are they still? I don't know.
I don't know either.
It'd be an SEC team, David. It's an SEC team if assuming things are still constructed the way they have been in that bowl. Bill, do you think the QB limitations affected Lester's play calling today, Don? Absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. The Voice of College Football Butkus Award finalists are from Georgia, Oklahoma, UCLA and Clemson. So 2 of those teams have just 2 losses. Oklahoma, UCLA. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, that's unfortunate, I guess. I'd like to know tackle numbers. I'd like to know stats comparatively, throughout those different candidates. Iowa's defense took a step back this year. Could that be something to do with it, even though, maybe it's not just the team's performance as a whole, but the fact that the defense as a whole took a step back? And I don't know. I really don't have a way to explain.
Tell me this, Corey, do we have a final on Georgia Tech? I don't know who won.
Yeah, Georgia won 44-42. And it's not quadruple, it's not centuple, it's not sextuple. That's 6, right? Is it quintuple for 7? What is it for 8?
I think that's called 8 overtimes.
Let's see here. Equivalent for 8. That is called septuple is 7. Octuple overtime. Octuple. Thank you. Yes, that's octuple overtime. All right.
Let me give you a thought about overtime. This makes more sense to me. I hate to get or 10-10 at the end of regulation, and then after overtime, it's 42-38. I hate that. Because my point is, Corey, those defenses did a great job for 60 minutes, and now it says that they gave up 42 points or 38 points. It seems silly. So my suggestion is, what about, instead of starting on the 25, what about starting at the plus 40? And let's see what happens. I think you'd have a lot of short overtimes.
Yeah.
And you'd have a quick result rather than 8 overtimes.
Except Drew Stevens would make a 58-yard field goal from the 40.
That's why I like the rule.
Yeah.
If you have a kicker with a strong leg that's accurate, you don't mind starting on the plus 40.
Let's go to our final Iowa Smokehouse caller of the night. Tom is out and back from the fields. Tom, you're safe. You look tired. Tom.
I am.
Tom, you called in like
I ran out of net wrap. I ran out of beverages.
Huh?
Gotta keep up with Corey, but I ran out of beverages and net wrap. So we'll hit it tomorrow.
What's net wrap?
You put around the bales to hold them together.
Oh, okay.
Bales of corn stalks.
All right.
So, Don, I was born into a period of Hawkeye sports that I'm spoiled. Hayden Fry, Lute Olson, and Tom Davis, and Vivian Stringer.
Great coaches all the way around.
Yeah. I mean, the best. And so Luke got me going on tonight, and on his call. And so, Corey, I know you're a big Fran fan. We got to keep Fran, and I'm not here to get rid of Fran because I don't want to go to Licklider.
Are you being serious? Are you being serious?
But when I get done at the end of the year and I look at Fran and what he did, he overachieved. Okay?
Fran or Kirk?
Fran. So when you get down and look at this schedule here, and how the Hawkeyes perform, best they could have done was 9-3, right? They weren't in the Michigan State game. Defense was bad. UCLA, they maybe could have squeaked that game out, right?
Okay.
But there's 3 games.
Let's not forget that the Iowa State game could have gone either way.
So that it could have gone either way. So maybe 10-2. All I am here to tell you is Kurt Ferentz isn't that bad a coach. There is 80 fan bases that want their head coach fired tonight out of 130. there is 80 fan bases that want their second string quarterback to quarterback this team. I listened to part of the Nebraska postgame show. Alabama wants a new fucking head coach, you know? I mean, Kurt is an overachiever and he keeps you in every ball game. And I'm telling you tonight that if you had had Luke Fickell here and you'd be 5-7, how happy would you be?
Okay. All right.
I mean, that's what you got to look forward to. Look at Wisconsin. I mean, Eric Carr brought it up, but how did that change work out for him? I mean, they got obliviated by Iowa of all teams, right? Don't even have an offense, and they got obliviated by them. Minnesota powered over them. I'm just saying that if Kurt left tomorrow, I wouldn't cry. But he's not that bad a coach.
We can agree on that.
Yes.
I might cry, though. But he's not that bad of a coach. I agree.
No.
He's actually a good coach.
He's actually a really good coach.
If you look at college football teams, the two things that beat you are turnovers and field goal kicking. That's what wins you ball games. Now, and as far as this goes, Kurt Ferentz went out and got Cade McNamara. It didn't work out, right?
Yep.
But they did go out and get him. They went and got Caleb. I plant a crop every year. Guess what? I don't get record yields every year. We do our dangdest to get there. But you start the season out with what you have. And if you put yourself in his situation, I mean, he even went out and got Sullivan for a backup. I mean, I'm not here to debate who should be playing. That's his job, right? But he didn't go through the portal and not go get another quarterback to back him up for this year, right?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, there it is.
Yeah.
And Corey, I love it when you get the Swarm guy, Hendricks, Brian.
Okay.
And so when we signed Caleb, I bought a Swarm membership. You know, I signed up with Swarm.
Okay.
I don't go to the ball games, so I thought, you know what? Least I can do is buy into the Swarm. And I did that after they got Caleb. I understand it doesn't all work out, right? We know this is they're going to come and go, right? Over the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever it might be. But I think this coaching staff is trying.
I agree.
And
absolutely agree.
There's 8 teams, maybe 10, maybe 12, that have talent far more better than what we have, right? Now, you take USC, they got all the talent in the world, but they didn't look very good this year, right? So is it coaching? Would you want to get rid of Kurt Ferentz and get Luke, get that coach in here? I don't know that I want him, you know?
Well, Tom, I appreciate
It's not all
you.
bad, win and ugly.
No, it's not. I appreciate you. I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to sleep.
All right, I'll let you go, Corey.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it, sir. Say hi to the wife. Appreciate you guys watching. All right. Well, last thing. Well, thank you, Mark, for being here. Appreciate you being a part of the show and for the great work that you do over at the Voice of College Football. Be sure you check out RTI Threads. Here is their website, their NIL division. Just click on NIL athletes up here, and you can browse the selection. People like Josh Dix, Owen Freeman, Jacob Gill, Cooper DeJean, and much more. This is the RTI Threads website. And again, just scroll over here to NIL athletes and browse the apparel. They've also got an exclusive deal with the Swarm and Iowa baseball. So great gift ideas, customized right there at rtithreads.com. Use that /NIL. The Iowa Hawkeyes, victorious 13-10 over the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And I'll run through just a few notes that I missed earlier, Don, as we wrap this thing up. We talked about, we didn't talk about this. Iowa going 3-and-out in their first drive. And that continued. That was a theme. Going 3-and-out. Hawkeyes held Nebraska to an early red zone field goal. I did mention on my preview that Nebraska's red zone offense was not the best. They proved that today. So that continued. They were one of the worst teams in the Big Ten heading into this game in red zone offense conversion rate. And that only measures, by the way, a percentage of times they actually score, right? Not touchdown versus field goal. Some interesting play calling early. Iowa goes run, check down on the opening drive. Raiola had a wonderful third down conversion and then misses a receiver on a go route, overthrows him. Might have been a touchdown there early. Speaking of an overthrow, Jackson Stratton on their second drive overthrows Jarrett Bowie on third down on a Nebraska blitz. It was a good call by Tim Lester and a good read from Jackson, but he overthrows Bowie. Hawkeyes then sack Raiola on a third down, forcing a fumble. Nebraska gets on the ball. Caden Weegan reverses field. Iowa avoids an illegal block in the back or a hold, which is oftentimes what happens on those punt returns where a guy comes back all the way across the field, gets a good return there. Iowa punts on 4th and 1 after just another 3rd and 1 where Iowa fails to get it on the ground. Iowa, I feel like short yardage situations, they really struggled tonight. I don't have the data in front of me, but whether it be Kamari or Jazz, they tend to go with those guys on 3rd and short. Don, any reason for that? Why not go with the bigger body and Caleb on 3rd and 1?
I don't know, other than the smaller back, maybe they think doesn't need as much of a running lane as the bigger back. I don't know. It's a good question. The negative, of course, is maybe they're not going to get that hard yard that you need for the first down, as well as Caleb. That's debatable, I guess, as to who's better than who. But I don't know that necessarily the replacement back shows up just because we're in short yardage. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
that's a question really that only maybe the running back coach could answer.
Following that punt, another Ethan Herkett sack forces a Nebraska punt. We head to the second quarter. Another 3-and-out for Iowa. Another 3-and-out for Nebraska. First solid run from Caleb Johnson came in that second quarter for a first down. And then on a 3rd and 10, Iowa takes a shot. No pass interference on a deep ball to Jacob Gill. And that preceded Kirk Ferentz passing on the 56-yard try. Iowa ends up punting, and Nebraska kind of gets their back up against the wall, but kind of flipped the field back. But going back to that PI or non-PI call, did you feel like that was pass interference on the shot down the field to Jacob Gill?
Yeah, I thought we might get a call there.
Impressive Nebraska drive ends with a 1-yard touchdown run with 38 seconds left in the half. I didn't think it was great clock management from Nebraska. I thought they called the timeout too early. They got a first down inside the 2-yard line and burned a timeout, which didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because I would think you'd want it. You get the clock stopping momentarily for them to move the chains. But anyways, they found their way into the end zone for a 38 seconds to go in the half. Iowa sits on 3 timeouts heading into halftime. Don, your thoughts on that down 10-0?
Well, I can't remember for sure when there was a good opportunity to use a timeout. Part of our problem, of course, you don't have any kind of drive if you can't convert on 3 downs. And you know what I'm saying?
Well, I'm not talking about Iowa calling timeouts defensively. I'm saying they sat on 3 timeouts with the ball with 38 seconds left at the 25.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Down 10-0 at halftime.
the way we struggled, I can understand. I think Kirk said it before one time. There was a more obvious situation a few weeks ago where Kirk said, I'm sorry, I just had bad feelings about what might happen. That was his rationale. And of course, as a head coach, that might enter into his thinking, like just a sense that he has that this is not going to go well if we get too bold. So at that point, I wasn't happy to be down 10-0, but I was at least relieved that it didn't turn into more than 10.
In the third quarter, a questionable third down pass interference call on your guy, TJ Hall.
Corey, getting back to that situation where we didn't use our timeouts, let's not forget we have not been a good 2-minute offense anyway. Not to mention we're playing an experienced quarterback, and we struggled to make first downs throughout the first half. I didn't have any issue with not being bold at the end of the half, trying to get back in the game because I was afraid it was going to blow back on us.
Don, your thought on that questionable pass interference call on TJ Hall in the third?
Well, I simply asked somebody nearby. I said, did they say pass interference or did they say defensive holding?
Pass interference.
And when they told me they said the ruling was pass interference, I said, that's no way that's a good call because that ball was simply uncatchable.
Right. I said the same thing when it happened. I said, that's a hold, but it's not pass interference.
Yeah, if they would have called holding, I wouldn't have complained. The fact that they ruled it pass interference,
but
that's a bad call.
They were both grabbing each other. That's the other part of it. They're both grabbing each other.
You're right.
Nebraska red zone, bad snap, and a shanked field goal. So a bad snap and a field goal. That was a big missed field goal in the game. Big Caleb Johnson run. Iowa ends up punting. Nebraska has the muffed punt, which was not actually muffed, but then it was touched by the third player on the spot, and Iowa recovers, but they're held to a field goal inside the 5-yard line. So not a good job getting the ball in. I kind of thought go for it inside the 2, but in hindsight, the right decision was made.
I think that was the right decision. I made the comment at the time. We used 3 downs and we moved 2 yards. What would possess us to think we can gain 2 on 4th down? And the point is, Corey, we were down by 2 scores. A field goal makes it a 1-score game. Let's kick it. I hate to kick on from the 2-yard line, but we better kick it because these first 3 downs haven't worked. I don't know why we should expect 4th down to be different.
Multiple. It was brought up earlier. Multiple missed face mask penalties against TJ Hall. I mean, guys grabbing TJ Hall's face mask. You'll have to see this on the TV tape later. Of course, the heroic 4th down run by Caleb Johnson. I saw, fourth quarter run by Caleb Johnson. I saw somebody earlier bring up how I didn't include him in our player of the game. Well, okay, I could have made 3 players of the game, but yeah, he just an unbelievable run, and Iowa doesn't win without that run. Teams trading punts, and then of course the Llewellyn-Stevens finale. So that was all she wrote. And according to the official box score for the game, Iowa finished with a total. Find the official numbers here. Iowa finished with a total of 164 yards, 72 of which came on that scamper by Caleb Johnson in the 4th quarter. Iowa finished with just 1 penalty for 15 yards, 4 for Nebraska for 20 yards. So they were well under their average. They were one of the worst teams in the Big Ten heading into this game. And penalty yardage, Iowa right on par with what they've done. They just do not commit penalties. They are disciplined in that regard.
That reminds me, Corey, did you remember the Nebraska punt? One of their personal protectors clearly moved before the ball was snapped, and yet no flag.
He shifted one direction. So what's the rule there, Don? Because he shifted to the right as the ball, right when the ball came out, he had stopped his shift. It was very, very.
I can see where they might say, how's that different than a back moving from one side to the other of the quarterback, that type of thing. But I wasn't sure that he moved deliberately versus.
I think he moved deliberately, Don. You'll see that on the TV tape later. I think.
Well, maybe that's the right call. I don't know how they interpret that.
You understand from our vantage point, we get the view behind the punter on the TV film.
So you get a little better.
you can clearly see the move was intentional.
Okay.
Iowa was horrendous on third down. Incredible. 0 for 10. And actually, Nebraska was pretty good. 8 of 17 on third down.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, 2 of 3 for Nebraska in the red zone. Iowa 1 of 1. And Iowa perfect on field goals. Nebraska 1 of 2. 20.
I did make a point, Corey, of checking to see in the play-by-play itself, they do compute average starting field position. Now, I found that to not always be 100% accurate because I do it a little bit differently too. I think we've talked about it. If you run, let's say you run an interception back to the 1 yard line, then for field position purposes, they count that as the 99-yard line, right? When you cross midfield, obviously, you can't just add up the numbers and divide. That's not going to give you average field position. So if you start a drive in plus territory, then the numbers are bigger than 50, all the way down to the 99-yard line, which means you got tackled on the 1. But we didn't have any of that tonight. You know, there was no hidden yardage in terms of. Here's my point: if you return that interception for a touchdown, you don't even get credit for any field position. Well, the way I interpret it, if you return it for a touchdown, I'm going to count that possession that you didn't have. I'm going to count it as the 100-yard line. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You know, if you get tackled on the 1, is that really very different than scoring? No, it's not. Not at all. I mean, what are the odds you're going to stop him if the defensive player gets tackled on the 1? So I count it as 99-yard line is computed that way, the 1 yard line. But if it's a touchdown, I go ahead and count it as a possession that started on the 100-yard line. I think that's a better way to figure field position. Here's my point. Even the way the NCAA figures it, there was a big disparity in field position. Now, their numbers should be pretty accurate. The number they had just on average starting field position, ours was the 37-yard line. Meanwhile, Nebraska was the 22. That's a big edge. 15 yards on each and every start on average. That's a big edge. Bottom line, we gave them a long field, and they didn't give us so much a long field as we gave them. And that's what made all the difference, of course, with total offense being 2-1.
And on 20 first downs for the Huskers, 5 for Iowa. Net rushing yards, 144 for the Huskers, 49 for Iowa. That's not a stat you expected to see, but Nebraska was 6th in the conference in rush defense heading into the game. Both teams were very similar, middle of the pack in total offense in this conference, slightly below middle of the pack. And mentioned both teams were actually very good on third down heading into this game. That's one stat Iowa has been really good in offensively this year. They've been, really good versus third down. Excuse me. Iowa's defense has been really good versus third down. Nebraska converted some third downs tonight. Iowa's been better on offense on third down. They were not better tonight.
And the difference there, Corey, is we had way too many third and longs tonight.
Yes.
And it all started with being poor on early downs. We gained next to nothing on first and second down.
Did you feel like Tim called a good game, or do you feel like there were – because I made the comment earlier that in a tight game, perhaps Kirk maybe dictates a little bit more to Tim, run, pass, and that kind of puts Tim in a difficult position. Is that possible in a tight game like this?
I don't think Kirk's that specific. I think he simply decides 3rd and 3, we're going for it, and I'm here to tell you, choose a run, or like that type of thing. I don't think he's going to dictate run pass except maybe on critical downs.
So you're saying just on critical downs, you think that's happening?
I don't know that for a fact, but that's what I suspect. That's what most head coaches would do. Not be involved other than critical downs.
Well, I hope that's the I felt like this game didn't smell like Tim Lester's offense tonight.
Well, I will admit, now you've heard me say this too, Corey. I used to have to remind the players sometimes, listen, we really work long and hard to be sure we call all the right plays as best we can. But don't forget, they all require execution.
True.
So part of Tim's problem tonight, he called some good plays, that we simply didn't execute well.
Yeah.
And you got to give
Fair
got to
point.
give some credit to Nebraska for defending them well.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I
it's
thought
not
they-
that we performed poorly on the play; it's simply that they performed at a high level.
And I thought they could have passed the ball on early down situations, maybe a little bit more early.
Yeah, I can see why you would think that. Safe to say it was a pretty conservative approach.
Yeah. The Hawkeyes finishing their season 8-4, 13-10 win over the Nebraska Huskers, and they will wait championship week this next week. That will complete, and then they'll get their bowl assignment officially. Don, it's been a pleasure. We'll talk about the bowl game when we get it. We still got football here, and you and I will both enjoy Iowa women's and men's basketball. The women are 8-0. I know you were at the game, but I had 2 TV screens. I pulled another TV out of the other bedroom and had 2 TVs out in the living room and watched both games. And the Hawks, without Lucy Olson, won by 20 over a Big 12 team in BYU. So impressive stuff.
I'm a fan of Lucy Olson.
I am too.
She's not Caitlin Clark, but she's the next best thing, I think. She's that good, I believe.
And they need her back to play Tennessee in a week.
Yeah, tell me this. Is she likely to be back in a short amount of time?
Based on what I know, yes. I think she'll be
Good.
back. They get 8 days off. I think she'll be good to go for that game. I'll be surprised if she's not.
That's good to know.
And they're 8-0. So, folks, appreciate everybody being here. It's almost 2:30 in the morning. Don, thank you for being a trooper. It's been a long day. Get some rest, get some fluids, and we'll talk to you and prep for the bowl game.
That sounds like a plan. Thanks, Corey.
All right, folks, for Coach John Patterson, I'm Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. You've been watching Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Please subscribe. Get us to 10,000 subscribers. And don't forget to like the video and tell your friends about what we're doing right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We'll talk to you tomorrow.